I don't have them up. Amazing. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. We will reconvene to open session at 5:30. The board met in closed session, but no action was taken. Next, we'll take action on student disciplinary cases. Is there a motion to approve disciplinary cases 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 as recommended by the district?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote, please.
Are we on?
There you go.
Oh, there it is.
No.
Okay.
Mrs. Rohrbach, I'm an aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next, I invite everyone to stand for the flag salute. And after the flag salute, if you could please remain standing for a moment of silence for Buhat Colony employee Yer Lee, who recently passed away. Thank you. Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, next we have the oath of office for our newest trustee.
Think that'll work?
Yep.
All right, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Just repeat after me. I, Amali Jaisinga, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
I, Amali Jai Singha, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of California,
the Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge my duties
that I will well and faithfully discharge my duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
about which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations, Amali.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson, and congratulations, Trustee Jayasinga. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Before we take a motion, we are pulling item 14.11.
That's the consent agenda.
Yeah, we're going to pull item 14.11 from the consent agenda, yes. Yeah. So can we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Move to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we call for the vote, please?
It's this approval of agenda and then the consent agenda is to fit 14.
Yeah, we just make the amendment, yeah. I'm an aye, Mrs. Roebuck. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next, we have Showcase, Merced High School. Mr. Knott.
Everyone. Good evening, everyone. I have prepared a short video, it's a 4-minute video. I know this is supposed to be 5 minutes or less, so I'm not going to talk very much, but I did want to say good evening to the board and to the cabinet and to all the guests. So, Mr. Igniguez, can you go ahead and push play there?
Merced High School has been known as the home of scholars and champions Merced High School has been known as the home of scholars and champions for over 125 years. We believe that Merced High School is the community of Merced's greatest asset, and we have a responsibility to build the community of Merced one graduating class at a time. We feel we have a responsibility to help students become the best versions of themselves, which will in turn help our community thrive. To accomplish this, we have turned our focus to establishing a vision for readiness built around our strong school maxims.
Hi, my name is Heidi Pedroso, and I'm the Teacher Librarian and Vision for Readiness Coordinator at Merced High School. We created this program to provide direction for our instruction, as well as make sure that all of our Merced High School graduates are prepared with the skills necessary for higher education, as well as today's 21st century workforce. In today's workforce, the job skills needed have changed with the emphasis on collaboration, critical thinking, and being self-driven. The expectation for the Vision for Readiness is that all Merced High School graduates will leave here being effective communicators and collaborators, creative and critical thinkers, responsible users of technology, and resilient and self-directed learners. This program will provide them with these skills to be successful once they leave Merced High School.
Each year, our students will complete a number of planned activities that will build toward readiness. In the freshman year, those activities will include, among other things, completing a book study of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, personal, social, and academic goal-setting activities, and career and college action planning. Frosh Seminar teacher Ms. Solis stated that the first few months of freshman seminar have been focused on building foundational skills to support our vision for readiness and help students be successful throughout their 4 years at Merced High School. In the sophomore year, students continue reflecting on their goals with a shift to begin taking their own responsibility for their learning and considering their impact in our larger local, national, and global community. In the junior year, the students will begin to plan for their exit from high school, working on their personal electronic portfolios and studying the ethics and legality of their digital footprint. Finally, as seniors, they will get some real-world adulting instruction in the economics classes and have various opportunities to reflect on their personal growth and readiness to enter life beyond high school. Here is a word from Mr. Kane, Senior Economics and Government Teacher, about work with students on real-life education.
First of all, one of the things we try to do is everything we teach is to relate it to what kids are going to see in the next few years of their life when they leave high school. And Mr. DeSalvo did a great job of putting together a financial literacy unit and taking them all the way from the basics of checking, debt, all the way through. We basically take them through the beginning of their life all the way to retirement, all the things that they can do. And a lot of this stuff they're going to put in the corner of their mind, and hopefully it pops out one day. And but just the fact that them learning how basics of a checking account, savings account, what debt can mean to their credit score, because one day they're going to be 28, wanting to buy a home, but they're not ready to buy a home now, but they can ruin their credit in the meantime, and just little things like that. It's been eye-opening. I probably learned more than they have, made me second guess what my insurance policies were. So, but it's been great. I mean, it's been eye-opening. The kids are all involved, more questions than I've probably gotten the first quarter of my 25 years. It's been great.
It is our goal that our school-wide vision for readiness will be the glue that binds all of our programs and efforts together, maintaining our sense of purpose and giving us a clear sense of direction through whatever challenges we face. Our goal is to take a more active and purposeful approach to our longstanding motto and go about building scholars and champions, one graduating class at a time.
I'm going to keep this short as possible, so I'm available for questions.
Any questions?
Is the financial literacy portion that Mr. Kane was referencing, that's new this year at Merced High School?
It has grown this year. It started off as very small, but this year they actually spent the entire first quarter, which is actually ending at the end of the week, this week, doing that. So they spent the first quarter of the school year on that this year.
Awesome. Thank you.
My son really benefited from that course when he took it last year as a senior. He made some work, made some money, and actually came to us and said, I want to invest this. This is what I learned, and really put it to use right away. So that's great that you're building upon that course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Good job, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Next, we have principal's report with Mr. Nutt.
I actually was not prepared for this because I'm getting ready to leave to go back to another event at our campus, but just to report out at our school, we're doing great. Mr. Peterson, were you going to say something there?
No, that's just fine. I know you have another event to get to.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Okay, next we have general public comment period, and we do have 2 comments. The first is Pamela Merritt Bennett.
Board members, district staff, and fellow Merced citizens. I'm Pam Merritt Bennett of the Merced Black Parallel School Board. Thank you for allowing me to address you this evening. First, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Jayasinga on becoming the newest board trustee. Thank you for volunteering. On March 8th of last school year, the Merced Black Parallel School Board sent MUHSD board members a report of the results of our database study of the impact of campus police, otherwise known as school resource officers, on the various demographic student groups in MUHSD schools. Based upon those data, all of which came directly from the district office, we identified several concerns and recommendations. We suggested that district administration seriously consider the recommendations in order to avert what we predicted might become a real problem. As with most catastrophic events, the pandemic revealed program weaknesses within the MUHSD system. One such weakness is in the district's SRO policy. A manifestation of the problem surfaced in an SRO-involved incident at Merced High on August 19th of this year. In response to that event, the Merced Black Parallel School Board, Ms. Christy Johnson, and later Mr. Ralph Calderon agreed to meet this school year to discuss the implementation of changes that the Merced Black Parallel School Board and other community groups strongly believe need to be made in the district's SRO policy. Some Merced Black Parallel School Board members are career educators who understand very clearly the realities of managing classroom and campus student interactions. Consequently, we do not believe that our recommendations will in any way threaten campus safety. To the contrary, we believe that the long-term safety of students will be enhanced. This comment tonight is to inform board members of the need for district administration to engage honestly with community members about the school resource officer policy. Most important, it is to entreat you as trustees to inform the superintendent of your expectation that administrators responsible for SROs meet with us and be held accountable for implementation of agreed upon SRO program improvements. Thank you. Okay. I have to apologize. I need to leave. We're double booked at board meetings tonight, so please excuse me, but thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. Next speaker, Summer Keiki.
Hear me? Oh, yep, now you can. Sorry. Hello, thank you for the time. I am going to be speaking on a topic, and I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, that I'm sure many of us don't even want to acknowledge at the moment. As we are aware, there have been some mandates put into effect, or will be put into effect, that children now must have the COVID-19 vaccine to attend public school. I am a parent of a student who is within the Merced Unified High School District, and I have had students graduate from the Merced Unified High School District, and I want to thank you all for your service. I absolutely adore our district. I think that we do an excellent job of serving our students. I do know that every student, every child in the United States has a right to a free public education. This should be regardless of a COVID-19 vaccine status, in my very humbled opinion. I am not here to debate the efficacy of the vaccine. We all know, according to the CDC, when we get it, we can still spread and contract COVID. That's not debatable. We also know that vaccines can cause injury. They can cause harm. Both COVID and the vaccine can potentially cause death. It's just a fact. When we say our children have to get this vaccine in order to attend public school and do nothing to stop this, nothing to voice or advocate for a change or a difference, we are no less guilty than the vaccine itself in causing them harm. Parents feel coerced into getting their children this vaccine so that they can continue their education. Parents feel pressured into doing things that they would not normally choose to do. Now, if you choose to get vaccinated, that is your option. I love it. I love that the option is there. I'll hold your hand while you do it. But please, school board, I ask that you would consider advocating for your entire student body, because you serve a student body of vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. You serve a student body of children who need that in-person education. And let's be frank, some of these kids don't have a choice whether or not they will be vaccinated, because it is their parents making that decision for them. Kids who come to school and it's the only meal they have in the day. Kids who come to school, it's their only break away from a domestic violence situation. Kids who simply won't succeed if they don't have that in-person education. Now, there are other counties that are standing up against this mandate. I would ask that you would consider the same. And I do thank you again for your time. I'm sorry, this is something I feel very passionate about. I don't want my straight A student to miss out on a public education because we simply don't feel that that's the right way to protect her. So thank you again, and please consider my words. Consider them very strongly, because you are the voice for these kids.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Keiki. Next, we'll move on to reports and discussions. Facilities update, completed, current, and future projects. Ms. Miller and Mr. Calderon.
Pickle, board members Lopez, Ham, Valadez, and also welcome to our newest board member, Ms. Jaisinga. I am excited to report updates on our recent facilities projects in the district. We've had a productive summer and have accomplished many of our goals. I'll make this short and sweet, so if you have any questions along the way, please interrupt me. So I'd like to start, if you look at our PowerPoint presentation, you'll see that, let's see here. you will see that El Capitan High School roof project is not on the list, but we did complete that this summer. We completed the waterproofing, completed the total re-roof of the rotunda over the gym, and an area on the upper roof of Building C, and the front area of the theater also. This is an extensive project in the heat. Makes you really appreciate the classification of a roofer. And going back here, we also completed the Atwater High School 4-classroom portable project. That was done within 1 month. This is a perfect example of teamwork in our district. I couldn't have done it without the group of people, the custodians, who work very hard to assist me and make sure things flow just as smoothly through this project. Also, we are very, very near completion on the East Campus Yosemite High School gym remodel. It's a beautiful gym if you have an opportunity to go in there and look at it. We have bleachers that have been on hold for a little bit, but they have a planned delivery of November 1st. So we look forward to that and installing those when they come. And here's just a few photos of the projects. Okay, so our current facility projects we have going on right now: Atwater High School visitor bleacher replacement. Also, if you've had an opportunity to go by that area and see that project develop, it's pretty amazing. And we are very near completion on that. Also, December 31st is the contractual completion date. However, you know, we're hoping to be completed sooner than that. And there's just a few photos of the rebar and the pier footings that we poured. Okay, Merced High School Stadium, Phase 2. I know we're all very excited about this one too. Currently, foundations are near completion also. They will be poured, and final pour will occur next week, and delivery of the bleachers will also occur next week. When we receive them, they begin installing them immediately. So you're going to see a quick progression of that project. Here's some more photographs of the pier footings that are being dug. This is just a quick synopsis of some of the projects that we've done.
Melissa, so
and
how
completed.
quickly before you think the stadium will be completed at Merced High? Or Phase 2 anyway?
The contractual obligation is January 31st, although we've also rolled in the video scoreboard that we were able to purchase with donations. So, you know, that might extend some of the timeline, but very little, we're hoping. So
Thank you.
January 31st is our set date for that right now. So our planned facility projects that we have going on right now are the Livingston High School concessions and ticket booth. It looks as though we could be bidding at the beginning of November for that project. Also, the Merced High School and Atwater High School pool replacements. We've had some community discussions and on-site discussions with staff, and so that is in the development phase also. Golden Valley has some projects coming up too. We are working on the 4 portable classrooms over there, and the Golden Valley High School girls softball dugouts.
Do you mind discussing the timing a little bit as to,
Sure,
I know
absolutely.
there's a lot going on, but I'm wondering,
Yes.
for instance, on the pools, they're not starting for another year?
So-
What is starting in a year? Construction or
So
design or?
design concepts are are currently where we are at the level of design concepts right now. We have a pool consultant that has been hired to assist us, and that is part of the contract with the architect. I imagine that that's going to happen very quickly because they're very familiar with, you know, the construction of the pool.
If I can jump in.
Sure.
Basically, where we are, we've just finished the conceptual idea of what the pools are going to look like at both Atwater and Merced. We are scheduled to meet again with each of the sites to identify and nail down the ancillary buildings. And then once that's done, architects will start to draw the plans for each site. That'll take about 3 months. And then at the end of that time, the site cabinet will give their final stamp of approval. Those plans go to DSA, and that should take about 4 to 6 months.
I'd say probably more along the lines of 6 months,
Yeah.
but just to be on the safe side.
And by that time, we will be somewhere in October of next year when we will be able to go out to bid. And once we secure the bid and you guys approve it, it will take about another year to complete the pools.
Got it.
So-
And so is that the same with, for instance, I mean, there's just some that are further out, the concession
Sure.
stand and the painting. I'm sure the concession stand still has to go through DSA review.
Are we
also.
referring to
Golden Valley?
Golden Valley? So that's still on the list of, that's still in the discussion phase. And that's something that we've had conversations about within our project meetings. So Scott, you know, Dr. Weimer, if he'd like to step in and.
There are multiple options on the design, so we're still in design phase of looking at what's going to happen, because it would not be a standalone building. It most likely would be connection to the gym that's in existence, and so that's a lot more complicated on where you can actually do things and what would be involved. So we haven't got the actual design phase down part down yet.
Yes, so we're attempting to look at incorporating that into the existing structures that we have, and combining them between our gym and our cafeteria area. So again, we're still in the discussion phase of that.
What's the process for the community input?
At each site, the site was responsible for inviting community members. We did not have any attend the Atwater meeting, but we did have 2 community members attend the Merced.
And he's referring to the pool projects. So yes. So Mr. Mike Carpenter and Mr. Doug Dingledine, I believe is his name, both attended that meeting and had some input on that pool project at Merced High School.
So how is the public notified? I mean, is it, how does the information go out?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the site did that.
Okay.
But we do have further discussions going on, so it's always open for the community to come in and participate.
That's what I'm wondering, is how does the community find out so that they can participate? Is it posted somewhere? Is it on the website? Are they inviting individuals? Or how would the community know to attend?
Well, we can certainly post it and give more output to the community and invite them, you know, do a more open discussion.
I have the same questions as
Sure.
Ms. Pickle, because we did bring this up before when we first started talking about this. So can you notify the board as well when and how you're going to put the message out?
Sure.
Again?
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely.
On the painting
Yes.
of campuses, is that on a rotation or?
So maintenance and operations has been heading that up, and I know that BUHAC and I'm sorry, what was the other school site?
Merced High School.
Merced High School were both completed. I do know that he has East Campus on slot for that, and also Atwater High School, I believe. So that's coming up very soon.
So it says 22 is the completion date. Is that
It's a very general date.
It's a summer.
Okay.
The-
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's the other thing about choosing the projects is their accessibility for the work to be done.
Not wanting to impede on the students' access to their classrooms and creating too many issues on site. It really helps that we have a clear site and no students, they have their ability to get into their classrooms. So painting is a huge thing, and it does take some time.
Right now, we're looking at Atwater, Golden Valley, and East Campus this summer, and then Livingston would be the following summer.
For Livingston, did we have the track on the list as well? I thought I remembered seeing the track on the list.
No, I don't believe that was part of the project list.
Okay.
Melissa, I've got more of an HR question. So with the addition of portables at Atwater High, addition of portables at Golden Valley, and then as these projects start to be completed, this school year, are we hiring additional personnel as far as either custodians or janitors to help with that, or is there enough there to bring others on board to help with that, or?
I wouldn't. I hate to speak on behalf of custodians. However, there are 4 additional classrooms. It's not a classroom building with 12, a 2-story classroom building with, multiple classrooms in it. It's 4 additional classrooms. Possibly Ralph can speak more to that also.
Yeah, Mr. Lopez, we are in the process of evaluating the increase in classroom usage and student growth at all of our sites. That's a process that we go through every December, January, to bring those kinds of recommendations by March of the following year.
So as far as like adding these extra classrooms, I mean, is there a ratio that we use, like, such custodian is responsible for 15 classrooms during their shift, and so then as we're adding more to each campus, I mean, obviously it offsets that ratio, so then.
Yes, there is a ratio.
Okay.
Melissa, when do we anticipate seeing the long-term plan beyond this one?
So we are pretty far into that, the progress of that, the long-range facilities master plan. At this point, we're still reviewing sites. We're doing the final review of sites. We've done an extensive review of the HVAC systems, our fire alarm systems, and tomorrow morning we also have a meeting to look at our technology and see what kind of progress needs to be done in that area. So I foresee possibly the end of November that we will have a draft long-range facilities master plan for you to review.
We will be receiving draft plans for each site. Each site will go over them. We've already got the meeting set up for October, and the sites get an opportunity to go through the list of identified items for their site and then help us prioritize them. We want to hear from them. Once that prioritization is set, then they go back, and we should hope to bring something to the board at the December board meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Okay, next we have Superintendent Goals Update, Feeder School Communication and Instruction with Dr. Aguilar and Mr. Johnson.
Good evening. The Merced Union High School District is highly committed to providing our students the highest quality learning experiences and environment. Moreover, our superintendent, in collaboration with our Board of Trustees, have set goals to have meaningful feeder school communication and to continue to improve instructional practices. I'd like to share with you tonight, I apologize here, I'm in denial about my eyesight, so I'm going back and forth with my glasses. Our community is very diverse. We serve 3 different communities, and we currently serve approximately 11,000 students. We serve 13 different feeder schools that you see there, and our demographics by student group are overwhelmingly at 74% socioeconomically disadvantaged, or Title I, followed by our demographics of 69% Hispanic, and you see the other numbers. Our vision for this school district is to have every student walk off the graduation stage with a diploma, career technical education proficiency or certification, and college credit on their transcript. One of the first steps that we have begun to take in order to meet our goals to ensure that all of our students are ready post-high school with regard to any career or college or both that they decide to do is to meet with our feeder school districts. When we meet with our feeder school districts, we want to make sure that we have a very engaging topic and something that's relevant to all. I want to remind everyone here this evening about our college and career indicators and the work that we have done over the past 7 years. Yes, 7 years. We've worked on our CTE completers, our AP scores, with currently having quarterly meetings with our AP teachers. We have strong partnerships with UC Merced and the transcript evaluation system at the UC Chancellor's Office in Oakland. And we've created a digital course catalog in order to meet that and those goals. We have an A through G completion rate, dual enrollment with Merced College, seal of biliteracy, and lastly, math and ELA scores, our state testing. Our state testing is what we have not yet addressed over the course of the last 7 years. This year being year 7 of this work, we have begun to engage with all of our feeder school districts around math and how we can improve different areas of math. We're starting year 1 with engaging our feeder schools around the correct placement of all of our students into our math classes and to have data sharing agreements among all of our feeder districts. The 13 feeder districts that I shared earlier all have different criteria to place students, and they have different curriculum. So as simple as it may seem to have a meeting with 13 feeder districts, it's rather complex and time-consuming to get everyone in the room together to agree to move forward in one direction. As you can see on the slide, we had our very first meeting on September 23rd. We discussed data sharing, a meeting agenda for the remainder of the year, and we had the following school districts in attendance: Livingston Middle School, Livingston Unified School District, Atwater Elementary School District, Balico Cressy School District, Winton School District, Weaver School District, Merced City School District, Merced River, and McSwain. That is a lot of districts to have in the same room together to have a common discussion around common goals about the best practices to place our students. This is phase 1 of the work that we will be doing this year, which will be followed by phase 2, which is the understanding of curriculum that we're embarking on and using this year with Carnegie Learning Math, and the curriculums that all of our feeder schools are using so that we can get both of our sets of teachers from our feeder schools and our district in the same room together to have a common understanding of each other's curriculum, something that we currently don't have. So we would call that vertical alignment. And the third and last phase would be to talk about instructional practices. How are we teaching our students, in math? So we still have a long ways to go, but this is just the beginning of the work that we will be doing with all of our feeder schools. So you'll see the topic topics for the remainder of the year. As you'll note, we have a meeting on October 28th to look and revise the placement exam, the placement diagnostic that we currently have. Our feeder districts want to know how their students are doing once they get to our high schools, so we will be sharing data about how our students did. During that first meeting, we shared the recommendations that were made by our feeder districts and where students were actually placed. The next step would be to share data as to how the students are doing, and this allows for good calibration when teachers are making recommendations as to where students should be placed. So here tonight is, again, an agenda of future feeder school meetings around math. Are there any questions before I hand it over to Director Johnson?
This is about 8th grade math and then feeding into freshman year. And then some of these schools are also teaching integrated 1 or 2, right? And so ensuring that everything is in sync, if you will.
That is correct.
And if we're using Carnegie Learning and they're not, how does that work?
And that's our phase 2 of having an understanding of the curriculum that we're using and the curriculum that they're using. We've had discussions with our feeder school districts about having common curriculum and having them use Carnegie Learning Math. All of our school districts, feeder districts, were non-committal the first year because it was our first year, and they wanted to get a better sense of how we were using it and get feedback from our teachers after year 1. So we look forward to engaging with our feeder districts as phase 2 so that there's a better understanding of curriculums.
So Dr. Aguilar, is Common Core gone?
Common Core is not gone.
Yeah,
Common
okay.
Core is still here. We still are teaching to those standards. What is different is the textbook and the curriculum that students are using. The standards that we teach to are still there, which are the Common Core standards.
Okay. My personal experience was that my children's teachers created their own curriculum. There was no longer a textbook. And I imagine, I mean, all good intentions, but then if one school is doing one thing and another school, and then, right, they merge in high school and we're all in different places.
Yes, in the Pulse, you'll see that the usage reports that I've shared with you, and that is our attempt to ensure that all of our campuses and all of our teachers are using the curriculum that you approved as our core math curriculum. So right now, our goal with the curriculum with Carnegie Learning Math is to ensure that teachers are using it, that there is enough professional development for them. If there's difficulty accessing it and addressing any of those issues that perhaps teachers have. Just today, we scheduled a department chair meeting with all math department chairs on October 26th from 3:30 to 4:30 so that we can get feedback around curriculum, instructional practices, the math tutoring program, and the current state of where we are right now with the state of California with the math framework. The goal was to have this math framework adopted by our California Department of Ed in the fall. They've kicked the can down the road, and now it's in May. So that has also pushed us in a different direction, or kind of in a holding pattern right now with regard to the curriculum that we're using and perhaps what may be coming up in the near future.
Well, thank you. Thank you for working with all of the feeder schools to attempt to get everyone on the same page. As you've outlined, it's a mammoth undertaking, and it's important for our students and our teachers and success rates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Aguilar, the goal isn't necessarily to have every feeder district use Carnegie Learning, but rather to focus on standards and framework alignment moving into 9th grade, correct?
That is correct. So we want to make sure that we're all teaching to our standards, and Director Johnson will talk about that work here. But we want teachers to understand the curriculum that we're using and what our students are expected to learn. And we want our teachers to also understand what students are being taught in 8th grade math, 7th grade math, so that there's better alignment and transition between 8th and 9th grade.
Dr. Aguilar, my understanding when we approved the Carnegie Math was that there was a placement test already as part of their curriculum. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So then will we be using that assessment for our incoming freshmen, so we're not having to reinvent an assessment for the incoming 8th graders, 9th graders?
So I'll use the word assessment in air quotes. Mathia is the program that we're asking our teachers to use, which is the testing platform, and where we're pulling all of our data right now to see where our students are, so that you will get a nice baseline of growth from the very beginning to the first quarter, to the semester, to the third quarter, to the end of the year. So that is the test, quote unquote, that we're wanting all of our teachers to use and students to use, so that we have great data to be able to share, to say, okay, we're not hitting this standard, we're not hitting that other standard. Here's where our students are in correlation to taking a state math test, the CASP.
And then as far as instructional practices, that's the goal this year. I mean, I see it's on the agenda. So how soon will we start that work? Because obviously that's more important, I think, in my opinion, that teachers are using best instructional practices, regardless what curriculum they're using, because that's going to make or have a bigger impact on student achievement.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that question. I think it's first we need to have data in order to have those discussions, because without the data, there's really meaningless discussions to have. And that's really where we are right now. There's a lot of repair work that we've had to do with our feeder schools with regard to trust, ensuring that we're not math shaming, as students are matriculating through, but also building some collegiality between our staff and all of our feeder school staff. So that's really the work that we're doing now, so that when we get into the spring and into the beginning of next year, we can really start looking at the curriculum, okay? I think along with that, I think everyone wants to get into the instructional piece, but it's really important that we have that trust, we have the data, and then we have a common understanding of what each other is teaching before we can get into instructional practices.
And then as far as the assessment data, what percentage of the feeder students did take the placement test?
I believe it was around 70%. I can follow up in the pulse with more data, more accurate data with that, but I believe it was around 70% of our students that did end up taking the placement exam, either at the feeder school or when they arrived at the beginning of the school year with us.
So were the majority of the students that took that test placed properly in their math class, to start off?
I couldn't tell you offhand, but again, I have that data and I can share that with you and the rest of the board in the pulse in a report.
Thank you.
I actually have a question. Dr. Aguilar, how long has Mathia been used in our classrooms?
Mathia is brand new to the Merced Junior High School this year. So we have, I think the very beginning of the second week of school is when teachers started to use it. I am providing the board, which you will be privileged to, usage reports around Mathia and how our students are doing. So I look forward to sharing that data with you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Aguilar, what would be the reason why not all the students took the placement test?
Many of our students that came to us from feeder schools were homeschooled. I'm sorry, not homeschooled. We're being taught at home via distance learning. So there wasn't a process to give the students the exam and have them take the exam back. A lot of our feeder school teachers didn't want to send a paper test home, have the students do it and bring it back. So they weren't tested. Our school sites did the best they could when students were coming in to ensure that they had correct data and were able to test the students that were not tested in the spring at the feeder school.
Thank you.
One last thing, Dr. Aguilar. The key term that came out of last year and a half pandemic and school closures was learning loss. What are we currently seeing in Merced Union High School District as far as learning loss is concerned? Whether we talk about math and reading or / language arts. I mean, is it a problem?
And that is a phenomenal question, one that I really would like to address with you at the end of the first quarter, once we get some really good data from our teachers using Mathia. Again, I emphasize our teachers using Mathia because the only way I can answer that question for you, Mr. Lopez, is for our teachers to use a common program. And right now, in the past, I should say, we have not had that in place. We do now with our commitment to Carnegie Learning in Mathia, which is why it's been an emphasis for us to share with our school sites the usage patterns for Mathia and to ensure that all of our teachers are using it, and if they're not using it, that we can provide any sort of support or have a better understanding as to why.
So I believe years ago we had this conversation as far as having common assessments across grade levels, so we were really comparing apples to apples. Will Mathia or Carnegie offer us that opportunity to do so, so we can truly start to look at data and make sense of it, and then have some direction from it?
Yes, and Mathia goes along with the curriculum that we purchased from Carnegie Learning Math, and it supplements the gaps, air quotes, that students have in math. So it's supposed to, as their students are in an integrated Math 1 class, and let's say they're having difficulties with a certain standard, that Mathia platform levels up or down depending on where students are. So again, teaching to the standards is what our goal is. Getting data in a report so that we can align and collaborate along with that CASP test is what's really important for us right now. So to answer your question again, it's really important for us to make sure that we have good usage and we have our teachers trained, so that at the end of the quarter, I can better answer that question for you with regard to the gaps that we're seeing with our students.
So do we have set benchmark assessment dates for this year, or is it going to be like hit and miss?
There are, we're trying to meet every student where they are when they came in. Mathia, and it sounds like perhaps a future report or a report in the Pulse around what Mathia does could better explain. But we want to make sure that we are meeting every student where they are when they come in, and that's what the Mathia program does. Once we have students in Mathia, if they are at a 6th grade level or a 7th grade level or an 8th grade level, or wherever they are in 9th grade with integrated Math 1, that if they're having difficulties with fractions or multiplication or polynomials or whatever the case may be, that Mathia scales up or down. So it's not so much of us giving them a test, it's us saying students have mastered or are proficient in all of these grade standards for integrated 1, for integrated 2, for integrated 3. So we're moving away from the traditional big test, like the big SAT test, and focusing more on the standards that we want our students to be able to master and be proficient in.
But the assessments, I'm assuming, within the Carnegie program are standards-based, because it's a standards-based program. So do they have benchmarks embedded in the program that we can use to assess students and monitor their progress quarter by quarter or whatever that may be?
Yes, there's small formative assessments. It's not a big, 40, 50, question test that students get. It's again looked at by standard, and the students are given a short formative assessment to ensure they have mastery of the certain standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. Just a reminder for everyone to speak directly into the mic so that our voices can be picked up on the live stream, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. I'm here to report on goals 2 and 3 of the superintendent's goals. Goal number 2, identify and consistently implement essential standards and relevant embedded skills while integrating the 4 Cs. 2019 and 20, teachers curated a list of essential standards. That list was further refined down to CASP blueprint standards for ELA and social science, kind of as a result of the pandemic, because kids were out of school for a little while, so in terms of teaching a wide variety of standards, we decided to kind of break it down to what was assessed on the CASP. Math essential standards were completed in previous years and have been shared widely and are posted. Science essential standards are in progress as we align our courses to the next generation science standards. 2020-21, skill-based student-centered learning experiences, PBL and UDL, ongoing. 4 Cs on all site walkthrough forms. 21-22, decided to go back to the basics. Kids hadn't been in the classroom in a little while, so we wanted to take a look at maybe a few must-haves for lessons for teachers. Those must-haves include learning objectives or target or intention, whatever you want to call it, bringing student voice and connectedness, having lessons at DLK 2 or higher, checking for understanding, and closure. Also, 21-22, develop a method to measure student masteries of the skills. Looking down the road, we would like to be able to track and publish student results for use in collaboration and PD. The Developing the mastery of student skills, method of measuring student skills. We are looking at certain companies. Mr. Lopez, we were talking about testing, looking at Otis and Edulastic to try to create some assessments for teachers' use. Next. Goal number 3, continue implementation of instructional methods that foster student-centered learning, including the use of multiple measures in all areas with special emphasis in mathematics. In 19 to 21, develop an instructional framework that defines student-centered instruction and provides resources for administrators and teachers. That's been completed and the resources are ongoing. 2022, develop a plan tool to monitor implementation of student-centered learning experiences and provide feedback for the teachers. We were able to create certain elements on every site's walkthrough form. So every administrator that goes to the teachers' classrooms and they're checking on instruction, they're able to indicate whether or not student-centered learning is going on, and they can follow up with discussions. Elements of UDL on all site walkthrough forms, site visits and walkthroughs with APs of teaching and learning. I meet with teaching and learning APs every week, and once or twice a month, I do learning walks with them so we can calibrate. And I have monthly meetings with the principals so we could discuss interventions and instructions, and you have that schedule in the pulse of my walkthroughs and my visits. And on the last slide, we do have that definition of student-centered. Student-centered is where students take ownership and lead their learning in an active role, choosing and assessing their own learning according to their individual interests, abilities, and learning styles. Basically, students are doing the bulk of the cognitive work, and we need to continue to support students and push them with rigorous pedagogy and curriculum. Questions?
Mr. Johnson, you said that you have developed a plan to monitor the implementation of the student-centered learning. What is that?
Basically, it's on every administrator's walkthrough form, right? Is student learning happening, or what elements of student learning is happening? So as they're doing their walkthroughs, they can measure whether it's happening. I go out and walk with them so we can have discussions about what we see, so we can calibrate and maybe what kind of feedback to leave the teacher. So currently, that is the monitoring tool.
So walkthrough is you going to the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and then do you have a forum where you keep track of this, or what?
The sites keep track of that, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, next we have Local Control Accountability Plan update and next steps for 2022. Dr. Aguilar and Ms. McCauley.
Thank you. The LCAP is a tool for local educational agencies to set goals, plan actions, and leverage resources to meet its goals to improve student outcomes. The Merced County Office of Education analyzed LCAPs countywide to ensure consistency of metrics and accuracy of budgets for actions and services included in the Local Control Accountability Plan. This report outlines modifications made to the Merced Union High School District LCAP, along with future processes and LCAP meeting dates for this school year, 2021-2022. I'd like to introduce Ms. Jeanette McCauley. She's a program administrator in our Educational Services Department. She will be the PIN for the Local Control Accountability Plan this upcoming year, and she's also been tasked with the responsibility to make updates to our previous LCAP, our future LCAP, and our learning continuity plan that we have put before you last year. So she's here to report on the and an update on changes that were requested by the Merced County Office of Education. I will then conclude with our next steps with our LCAP for this upcoming year. Ms. McCauley.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent, Cabinet, and everyone who's here. Okay, there we go. All right. I had the opportunity this spring, this summer, to go ahead and take over the LCAP. I have worked at Merced High School for the last 6 years as an associate principal and had the privilege of coming over to the district office. And so I had a chance to work with Cheryl and Merced County Office of Education. How it works is they review our plan now in the fall, even though last spring you guys approved it. So I'm going to kind of go through the review and the findings that they had. So just a little review. As Dr. Aguilar was saying, there is the LCAP, which is the Local Control Accountability Plan. It is a 3-year plan. And every year we have annual updates. This last year, we began our 3-year plan. We also had an annual update. Due to COVID, the state of California added the Learning Continuity Attendance Plan, which looks like LCAP, but goes by LCP. So bear with me because that was a lot of our issues among the plan, that we used LCAP instead of how they use it, LCP. So now I'm going to go backwards. I apologize. So in a review, they looked at our annual update, the LCP, the 3-year LCAP plan, and then our budget overview for the parents, and basically this year's LCAP budget. I'm sorry about this. I changed it afterwards. So our first one for the annual update. So again, if you see, it's 1920. And so our metric, our indicators, one thing they found inconsistent or incomplete was our data. And during COVID, there were a lot of challenges trying to put together data, especially when the state of California wasn't collecting it, and we had consistent changes with the pandemic. So all I had to do was go through and just make sure we got 2019, 2020 data the best I could, and aligned it. If I couldn't, I was allowed to put, due to COVID, could not get 1920 data. So I just went through the annual update and cleaned up the metrics. So if you guys see there, some of the findings didn't have a date in front of it, or we were 18, 19, and so I just went through and aligned it throughout. The next one, our goals were not exactly verbatim as the 1920 plan. And the finding was Merced Union High School District. In our original plan, we did not have Merced Union High School District. So I had to go copy it and change that. And I apologize how it's listed, but with a little corner, I had to make it work this way. So some budget lines, for example, the finding is we had something on the left side as expenditure, but it wasn't originally in the 1920 plan. So I had to go through and remove anything because it was $0 still, but since it wasn't there in the original plan, I had to go through and delete it. Where am I pointing this? Okay. Now to the LCP. So little rewind there is for the annual update, aligned the metrics and aligned our verbatim goals and made sure it matched the actions and the goals of the 2019. So pretty basic on the annual update. Now the LCP, which was new last year because of COVID, they wanted more stakeholder feedback, which we guys did. I mean, I was able to go through all the board presentations last year and go through Dr. Aguilar's and everybody's presentations with the survey data they gave you, and I was able just to add it in, and that's mainly what I did. I updated the stakeholder feedback, which was fantastic with all the different meetings we had last fall. Again, I added the survey data and had to update successes and challenges. Like, we didn't list enough for them. And so I was able, from my past experience at the high schools and working with Mr. Johnson with the teaching and learning, I had a good insight of successes and challenges that were happening at the sites. Where am I pointing this, gentlemen? There we go. All right, now we're up to the 21-24 LCAP, which is brand new, which you guys approved this last year. And so there's a couple different parts. So bear with me. The first one's the plan summary. That's where you get to write a lot of fun stuff about what we're doing with Merced Union High School District and at our sites. So the data was outdated. So remember from the 2019-2020, I had to update the metrics. So I was able to just go through and I copied the metrics over. And they requested more details on the successes, how we plan to build upon those, and elaborate how we continue. And so again, having the opportunity to be a part of Mr. Johnson's weekly teaching and learning instructional meetings, being a part of Ed Services, again, being at the site for the last 6 years, I know the great stuff that we are already doing at Merced Union High School District. I also know the challenges that we've had the last couple of years as we move forward, as we plan the 21-24 LCAP. And so I was able to add things that we are working on. Oopsie. So again, in the plan summary, they wanted more examples of strengthening the student connectedness. So again, I went back to our stakeholder involvement and our family engagement plans. I listed some effective classroom strategies and everything that we are doing to hopefully make student-centered instruction and to make our students and our teachers stronger in the classroom. All right. So then the next part was stakeholder engagement, and this is great for me to learn because I get to do the annual update this next year. And so we were missing some of these components in the write-up. So I just had to go back and check with everybody when we did these stakeholders meetings and provide that feedback in the plan. And again, we use the LCP a lot versus the LCAP. And so I had to go update that. But after last year, we did focus a lot on our pandemic issues, which were listed in the LCP. So again, pretty easy just to update everything. Then the goals and action is the next section. And again, this is the same thing, missing the metrics. I went back and copied what I had in the 1920. They wanted some they wanted like quantitative data. And so then I was able to compare our data that we've had. I went back to Debbie Glass's LCAP plans, what we've used the last several years, and I used a lot of reference from there on the quantitative data that they use. And so kept it simple, so dropout rates will decrease, and then just decrease by 0.5. And so that's what we added. Now, this is something that was a little larger in scope, and I believe our new LCAT template that's coming out here in November will be a part of this, where they would like to see the increased improved services for our foster youth, English learners, and low income. Truly identify what we're doing. And we know what we're doing. We are doing a lot. And so I was able to, thank goodness, again, break that down from my experience from the last 6 years, and also, again, our teaching and learning instructional meetings, knowing the stuff that we're doing inside the classrooms already. And so I was able to list out exact things that we're doing for our special populations versus for school-wide or district-wide. And finally, thank you guys for such an exciting presentation. We were off by 0.5% of our budget, so I got to go in and calculate the numbers, and I was able to make sure the allocation matched at the end. And in the end, it was approved. So now Dr. Aguilar, unless we have questions first. And there's a lot of links on the bottom of the presentations that help go along with everything. But go ahead, I'm sorry. Pickle, you have a question?
No, I was just going to ask if anybody had any questions.
Okay.
So,
I get excited, sorry.
I do have a, go ahead, Richard.
So Dr. Aguilar, with Mrs. McCauley taking this over now, and then will she have a support team? Because this is, our LCAP from MUHSD is tremendous, you know, and all the work that's got to go into it, that, you know, to solely leave it up to, I'm sure it's not just her. There's got to be a group of people that are going to help her along the way, correct?
The group is Ms. McCauley and Dr. Aguilar, and we do have all of our sites that we count on to help us share the LCAP and report back on the LCAP. So from the district office, it's both Ms. McCauley and myself. And if you look at the last slide here, and this is a great segue, it's almost like we knew that you're going to ask that question. But it's really important that all of our sites share the LCAP with their parents. Because what we ask our sites to do is to share all the actions and services that are in the LCAP for this year, so that when we get to January, the second part of our school year, you know, that we are able to share, you know, and truly evaluate the successes, omissions, or things that we have to do with the LCAP. So again, it is a team effort. It is driven by primarily Ms. McCauley, myself, and then we rely on the site's administrators to help us with it as well.
And in the interest of being transparent with the revisions or recommendations from the MCOE review team, is this something that we're going to share out with at our first LCAP meeting with our stakeholders, so that they're aware, hey, you know, these were things that were found, we've corrected them, and we're moving forward now. This is our 3-year plan moving forward now.
That is correct, and that's part of the evaluation that we will do.
in the second half of the school year. I do want to add that the changes that were made to the LCAP were very minuscule and very technical. Like Ms. McCauley shared, like not copying verbatim from one plan to the other, or having a 0 in a column where they so much of what the process that in the analysis that they did was very, very technical. There was no overhaul. There was no removal of a big action item or service that we're providing to students. So I do want to make sure that we make that clear.
Thank you.
And I want to add that we have Dr. Weimer and his fiscal department that helped in this process too. I can't forget about the money.
So I was going to ask the same thing. I wanted to know if you were still going to be involved with it or if she was just going to. So thanks for answering that question. The other thing was, how are we going to put the word out so that the parents and stakeholders know about these meetings? And are we going to allow people to join through Zoom or something similar to that?
Yeah, so all of our meetings, one of the positives that we learned through this COVID circumstance is we got more parents participating via Zoom. So we're going to have a mixture of meetings via Zoom and in person. I think also working with our communications director, Mr. Iniguez, we've gotten really good with Facebook Live. We've gotten really good with MUHSD Minutes and the different podcasts and the different media systems that we have to share all these meetings with parents. So those are the strategies that we will use.
Thank you. No, I think we're always asking how to put the word out because sometimes it seems like people didn't get the word out or get the word, not the word out, but the word.
I know, it's exciting. So Mr. Knott actually left tonight because they were doing a night of excellence, and that's what we've done the last several years, where we recognize the students who achieved different measurements under the LCAP goals. And so then that's another way that they get personal invites on top of still it being put out on Parent Square social media. And so each site still does their own little spice to try to get parents and community there to provide feedback.
Thank you. Last question was, when we voted on this, whenever it was, there was going to be some revisions made, then we were going to get an updated copy. Can we get an updated copy of the full plan?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to both of you.
And Cheryl Garman, if you're still out there somewhere, thank you also for your work on the LCAP last year. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have supporting students and staff, nurtured heart approach, and character strong. Dr. Aguilar.
Thank you. The Merced Union High School District has planned and started implementing the following two programs to serve our students: the Nurtured Heart Approach and Character Strong. The Nurtured Heart Approach is the vehicle through which connections are made with self, teacher, student, school, and families. The Nurtured Heart Approach is more than just a parenting or educator behavior management strategy. It's a philosophy and a mindset for creating healthy relationships with people in your life. Character Strong is a curriculum focused on fostering the whole child with vertically aligned lessons that teach social emotional learning and character side by side. The following are Character Strong competencies: social emotional learning, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Also, character development through patience, kindness, honesty, respect, selflessness, forgiveness, commitment, and humility. Here tonight, we have Ms. Viviana Barajas, who we have contracted with Nurtured Heart. Many of you may recognize her. She and Yosemite High School a few years back started with Nurtured Heart Approach and the Greatness Project. The second half of our presentation tonight will be with Principal Swartwood, who will talk to us about Character Strong and what he is doing at Golden Valley. So we will start with Ms. Barajas, and when she is finished, please ask her the questions, and then we will have Principal Swartwood come up, do his presentation, and then question and answers following his presentation.
Let's see if this works for me. I haven't been able to hear everything. Hello. It's nice to be here in person. So good evening to members of the board, board president, Superintendent Peterson, and cabinet. It is a pleasure to be with you here today, like I said, in person, talking about reconnecting and restoring through relationships. So in the past 2 months, I have been hitting the ground running. I have been interfacing with certificated, classified staff every Saturday since school started in August. I've been doing staff trainings every Saturday at every campus. I have been teaching students in classrooms. So students have now learned the beginning of how to change your mindset to learn the Nurtured Heart approach. That has been amazing for me to do. So over 1,000 students so far have received the first lesson, and I have teachers that are pushing that out. So I'm very grateful that I've gotten to see firsthand what our teachers are going through. This has been a very, very difficult year. So I just want to let you know through the eyes of educators, through the eyes of classified, that I've gotten a chance to really work with and talk to through the eyes of the students and through parents. I have gotten to do parent workshops so far this year in 2 months, hearing what parents are going through at home. So there has never been a more dire time to make sure that we're all focusing on relationships. So that's what I'm here to talk about, right? Relationships is, that's the only vehicle for us to get education out there. You can't learn when you don't feel good up here, when you don't know what's going on. And this connects with MTSS. I shared with the board, you weren't at the cabinet meeting when I shared this, so I'm going to go quickly through it because I think you know what Nurtured Heart is. But if you want more specifics, please refer back to this presentation. It's strengths-based, it's trauma-informed, and it's aligned with culturally responsive teaching. But I'm here today to talk about what have we done in the past 2 months. And like I said, I have a tremendous team. So every site this year has hired on as a stipend an NHA lead. And I will tell the sites, I see some administrators in here that they've done a great job at picking those leads. And their job has been they're the ones that are leading the efforts. Sorry. And I am working very closely with them, coaching them and creating capacity for them in whatever role they have. So we have some instructional coaches, we have teachers, we have some in Spanish teachers. En español también es muy importante para la comunidad. And we have counselors. Hopefully you'll see more of them. I wish their faces were on there because I'm so grateful for them. I couldn't do what I'm doing without their support and all the work that they put in. So far, these numbers are accurate as of maybe a week and a half ago. There has been over 200 staff trained 6 hours just this 2 months. So that's in addition to the 300 that were able to do the 6 hours last year. So that's amazing to have 500 staff. We've done notching up trainings. So we have opportunities every month for teachers who have already done the 6 hours to continue to deepen their understanding about all the applications of this approach, both personally and professionally. We've also, I have some comments from staff here. I'm not going to read through them, but basically these Saturdays that I've shared with staff, like I said, classified and certificated, have been moments that there's been a lot of tears shared. This approach is about being human and the need that we all have that's innate because we're human to have connection. Now the students, blowing my mind. Students, we focused this last month on perspective because that's how you change. You change mindset first by understanding, right, where is it that my energy goes? What do I highlight the most in my own life? And the feedback from students, I highly encourage you. I've given you all the links to Padlets that have been started by students. Please take the time to go through those to see what students are feeling right now and how students feel about the work that we're doing. So some of that feedback from students, it's like over 90% of students were able to define perspective, to understand how to give a recognition, which is the same thing that I am teaching parents and the same thing that I'm teaching staff. So over 90% of kids after one 45-minute lesson said, oh, I get perspective. I understand how it affects my life. And I love this quote because we've asked them, do you think that it's important to learn Nurtured Heart and the skills that we're teaching you? And one student said, I think it's important because I never thought of any of this. And I think it's the same for other people. So it opens the door to start thinking about perspective of others and will shape the way that students and teachers interact with others, even if it's only a small difference. So from the mouth of our own students, like I said, I'm here because I'm listening to them. A lot of them have never felt, more overwhelmed, but also grateful that they are in person so they can have some of those needs met And again, mentioning that it's the teachers and it's the frontline classified workers that are getting a lot of that. And so I just want to mention that we all need that support too, teachers, classified staff, I'm sure administrators. This has been kind of bananas, but we're moving in the right direction. So students also learn how to recognize themselves with evidence. That's part of the Nurture Heart approach. It's not just saying like, oh, you're so great and you're so nice, but how do you know? So we give them very explicit ways to reflect their teachers. Kids have started positive Padlets, energizing staff members, custodians, the liaisons. Those are the frontline. Liaisons know everything that's going on at every campus. Our students trust them. So it's lovely to see who the kids call out. And again, I would highly encourage you to check those out. All right, I think that was, I don't know where to, there you go. And then parents. We started our parent workshop series. That's over Zoom. And in English and also in Espanol, los jueves. We are in week 2 of those workshops. We had over 100 parents sign up. So we know that the need is great. And that's, in a high school setting, it's really hard to get parent engagement. But I have some regulars. I have some mothers that are living in Mexico away from their children that keep coming to everything that we offer. And as we know that when we have engagement with parents, right, it becomes easier for the rest of us to do our jobs. And so we want to continue to give opportunities for parents to jump in and get the tools so that we can all use this shared language and work a little more cohesively together to meet the great need that we're seeing today. So I'm open for questions.
No questions?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. Talk to you about social emotional learning at Golden Valley High School. This year we jumped into Character Strong. Character Strong is a curriculum that we purchased for Golden Valley High School as a Tier 1 intervention, which means every student receives these lessons. And there's a lot more to it than just saying it that way, because we've been looking at this for 2 years now. And I'll give some credit here to Mr. Richter, who's associate principal here at Buhat Colony right now. He was the one that started this implementation 2 years ago. So in the 1920 school year, we were having our activities director do some of the lessons from Character Strong in her leadership class. Kids loved it. She loved it. She was seeing some differences in how they acted and performed in the classroom. So Mr. Richter put together a team of teachers, about 12 people, went to a Character Strong seminar, came back and said, hey, this is really good stuff. Let's keep moving this in that direction. And we didn't know what that direction was at the time, but let's keep moving toward looking more into this. We had a second group ready to go in the spring of 2020, and everything fell apart at that time. So we didn't do anything the rest of that year. Last year, Character Strong got into some virtual seminars. So we continued the discussion and the movement toward how is this going to work in our school virtually. And then as last year progressed and we saw the tremendous amount of student issues, tuning out, not doing their work, poor grades, parent phone calls about my kid's depressed, my kid's given up, my kid doesn't want to do anything anymore, I'm worried. Tremendous amount of home visits. Every school in our district did tons of home visits. And just the amount of sorrow and depression we saw from students, we said, we have to do something like this. We've already been vetting this for 2 years. Let's put it in place. So that's kind of the background of why. So social emotional learning, especially through Character Strong, it's all based on standards. These are CASEL standards, which means they're standards for any social emotional learning curriculum. So Character Strong is not unique to that, but those are the 5 standards you see up there that all of their curriculum lessons will hit. So as far as implementation, if I can get this to work.
You just point it that way.
There we go. There we go. How to implement these. There's lessons. The lessons for Character Strong. There's very simple to do. We train all the teachers in how to do the lessons. Each lesson is about 1 period in length. And the whole idea on selling this to teachers was, hey, it's not one more thing on your plate. And what Character Strong tells people is it is the plate. If students are healthy socially, emotionally, you can do a lot of things in the classroom. So the lessons are all ready to go. Our instructional coach trained our teachers on how to implement these lessons, and they're one lesson a week. This just talks about implementation and how we support our teachers. We currently have an implementation team in place where we can back up our teachers and say, listen, how are the lessons going? What do you think we need to change? How are the kids responding to these lessons? So the implementation team just helps to focus them and keep them motivated to keep going. So here's how we're doing it. Our freshman seminar classes, there's 3 teachers. All of their classes will implement these lessons once a week. In order to make it a true Tier 1 intervention, we wanted to make sure every student received these lessons. That's why we went ahead and used sophomore, junior, and senior English classes also. So every student gets 1 lesson a week in Character Strong. I put typically on Wednesdays, but teachers have the leeway to implement the lesson wherever day, whatever period, whatever time that fits best in their lesson plans. Our implementation team, all 3 freshman seminar teachers are on the team. We have our English department chair because there's 10 English teachers. We wanted to try and keep the implementation team small, so we went ahead and had our English department chair on this team. Our instructional coach, who supports them a lot, is on our team. Our AP of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Lindsay Parker, myself, and our activities director is on this team. We meet actually twice a month and just talk about how can we support our teachers in this cause. And that's it. I'm here to answer any questions.
Mr. Swartwood, how do Character Strong and Nurtured Heart work together?
I think they fit. Actually, I think they fit really well together. The NHA, and you heard Viviana already talk about it. NHA it's a strategy that teachers can use, right? So all of our teachers can use that strategy. The ones that, as far as these lessons go, these lessons focus more on the students, right? Not that NHA doesn't, but it's more on the student. How can you be more self-aware? How can you self-manage? How can you show more respect? All those types of things. But I think they fit together.
Mr. Swartwood, as we look to address the social emotional needs of students as we come back, or as they came back, are we monitoring how effective this is working for our kids?
That's a great question. So, yes, the answer is yes. We will be. Okay. We need some baseline data, right? So, Mr. Aguilar has I think it's Panorama. Panorama is a group that has a survey that all students can take to find out where they are with those CASEL standards. Where are you at in self-awareness, self-management, those types of things. And then we can take that same assessment later and find out, did Character Strong improve these or not? So yeah, the answer is yes, we can. We just implemented the survey.
Right.
So so as campuses start to implement SEL curriculum, then they'll have a way to track it.
And Dr. Aguilar, is this something that we're looking to address across the district? Obviously, the social emotional needs aren't only happening at Golden Valley High School. They're happening district-wide. So is there a plan to carry this out maybe sometime this year for other school sites?
Yes, every one of our schools has embarked on this work through Nurtured Heart. And also, many of our schools have chosen Character Strong as their curriculum. I believe most of them have. Panorama is a platform that allows us to give surveys out to all students. So as Principal Swartwood just mentioned, we can trace the effectiveness of the curriculum, that SEL, social emotional learning curriculum that we're using by giving students the surveys to see how they are doing now versus the middle of the year, quarter of the year, 3/4 of the year, and then the end of the year. That is the data that I plan to share with you here in the upcoming months. But the survey, I believe, closes on the 25th?
I'm not sure exactly, but we're implementing those now, yep.
And I'm just saying in terms that we're seeing a lot of, student issues arise as they're coming back to full in-person, that obviously the focus will be on them becoming aware of the 5 standards, that they'll need to implement before they start to take action physically. So Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swartwood. Next, we have Independence High School and MUHSD virtual update. Mrs. Garman and Ms. Rose.
Hello? Good evening. Don't hear myself, do you? There we go. I'm Mrs. Garman. Mrs. Rhodes is going to start off and give you some information about Independence High School, and then I'll jump back in and give you an update about where we are with the virtual academy discussions. Good evening, President Pickle, members of the board, cabinet, Superintendent Peterson, and Mrs. Roback. Thank you for the time to update you on how students come to be enrolled at Independence High School and who we are currently serving. To request enrollment at Independence High School, we have a parent request form on the website. This request form asks parents to provide us brief information about their student and how they are as an independent learner, as well as how they performed during distance learning last year. So I have a direct link on the Independence High School website, and all of the comp sites also have a link that would direct them to this request. It's a pretty brief Google form. We just ask parents to give us a little bit of background on their student and how they feel their student has been doing with distance learning and returning to school, both academically and social and emotionally. This form is monitored by all comp site counselors and guidance APs. Once a request has been made, the comp site holds a parent-pupil educator meeting to discuss the requirements for attending Independence High School. The purpose of this meeting is really to make sure that parents and students understand how attendance, educational progress works for Independence, and that they understand that we offer online courses and not paper packets. Traditionally, a long time ago, paper packets was how Independence was run, but for many years now, it has been an online platform and online courses. So we just want to make sure students really understand what they're getting. I think it's important before coming and requesting and going through all the enrollment process with Independence that parents know that they are really just transferring from one high school to another, and it has just as much expectation as a comp site. After this meeting, Independence is officially notified with a screening form that the request has been made to attend. Parents and students attend a one-on-one orientation at Independence where they're enrolled, registered for classes, receive their first week's assignments, and first appointment day and time with their IHS teacher. It's really, I will admit, we do take quite a bit of time enrolling a student once they're there and we have the parent in front of us. It's very much like an onboarding process. We really make sure that they understand the contract that they're signing, the expectation of making educational progress, and attending those synchronous learning hours with their IHS teacher. In the past, IHS took new students every 2 weeks. That's how we did enrollment. This year, we're registering students at least three times a week, pretty much all day, starting from 8 till about 1 o'clock. We've been taking and scheduling appointments to get students in. This is kind of a breakdown, give you a snapshot of who's attending Independence so far this school year. As of last Friday, we had 201 students. Independence typically runs maybe about 80 students throughout the year, kind of ebb and flows. So it may not seem like a lot, but for the school, it was quite a big increase to happen from August till now. We have 129 females. 64% of the students on Independence are female. And you'll notice that we have over half of the student population on Independence requires some type of specialized service. So our foster youth and homeless students, special education, EL, and 504. So that's quite a large number. And then this is a breakdown here for staffing. And I'll tell you, our beginning of the school year, our requests were mostly due to medical reasons and COVID-related concerns. It's kind of shifted over the past few weeks. We are seeing more students asking due to anxiety and social concerns possibly on campuses. And also, I think the comp sites have done a tremendous job in tracking down students who are truant and finding them and initiating that you need to be in school, and so now they're requesting independence. So we are finding a large number of students who haven't been attending school. They've avoided and evaded the process, but now we're getting enrolled. This is the breakdown of staffing currently for independence. You'll notice that the teachers who are highlighted, those are special education teachers. They only have one section of independence. So during one period of the school day, they serve their SPED students on independence from their personal comp site. The rest of the day, they're collaborating, learning skills classes, and so on. So their numbers are a lot lower for that reason. The other teachers are full FTEs with independence, so they have 5 sections worth of students, so their numbers are higher. You will see that Livingston's number is low. So Mr. McElhatton will be taking overflow from El Capitan, or excuse me, from Atwater High School and Buhack High School to fill up his spots. Livingston just, for some reason, typically doesn't have kids on independence, so he will take overflow. We did hire a new teacher recently to do overflow for El Cap and Merced High, which have the most requests. I currently have about 48 pending requests. They still need to go through either our orientation or the process at the comp site. So the other teachers will be filling up, the regular ed teachers will be filling up as many spots as we can. We attempt to keep comp site teachers with their comp site students, but if it works out that a Golden Valley student needs to see the Merced High teacher or vice versa, then that's what we do for numbers. Any questions?
Ms. Rose, on the breakdown you had, where do medical students, what is the percentage of that in there? Is there?
It's actually a little bit difficult to tell this year. In the past, it was a lot more clear cut, but because this year you can claim a COVID reason, it makes it difficult for us to delineate if it's more about anxiety and precaution or if there's a true medical condition. But we do still serve, I would say, maybe 10–15% of the students have a medical condition that would prohibit them from being on a comp site for any reason. It's just medically not safe.
And the forms that and questions that are asked, have those been looked at or revised? As, for example, there's some questions that may not apply to some students. Have those been changed, revised, or is there different ones for different type of student?
For the parent request one, is that the one you're
Yeah, the
referring to?
parent questionnaire, when the principal calls and talks to the student and the parent.
So we have kind of 2 sets. The parent one that is linked on the website is pretty generic. It's really just getting the parent's opinion on their student. And then we provided a whole list of different questions that the comp site could ask during the parent meeting. And those were just there for reference. So they can choose and pick whichever ones they feel need to be asked during that time for that student. So I haven't done a revision since those were put out, but that's something that we can do.
All right, thank you.
What do you believe is the appropriate number of students per teacher? And I know you explained that some of these are on a comprehensive site, but you know they vary from 1 to 7 if they're a special ed teacher, and maybe 13 to 26 if they're not.
So typically for the SPED teachers, we put about 8 is what we're looking at as the max to service during one class section. As far as the other ones, and Mr. Weimer knows I'm going to look at him for that one, there's a formula for that, that we need a ratio between the number of FTEs and how many students that we have enrolled. So that one tends to kind of flux. I know in the past the teachers have had pretty small amounts. we've kind of increased our number from 19 is where we started at to about 26 right now. So we're trying to keep it manageable for the teachers since they do meet 1 full hour a day with students.
So you feel like you're appropriately staffed, adding a new teacher and a new counselor?
Yes. So adding the new teacher, I will already have that teacher full, the same as all of the other comp sites, because we had that many waiting to get moved over. So she will be full within a week and a half. And then with the counselor, so our enrollment jumping from, maybe in the 80s till this within about a month and a half. I have a CWA and a teacher on special assignment, Mrs. Vigil, and then a data entry / registrar that I share with Yosemite. They have done all of the enrollment. And then Ms. Caitlin Mayo, she stepped up to help me with counseling duties on site and to help get that registration process faster. With 52% of the students needing some type of special service, I greatly appreciate having a counselor to be able to support those kids.
Thank you.
Ms. Rose, you mentioned you had 48 on a waiting list right now?
So we have 48 parents who have indicated they have interest.
Okay.
Some of those are already tagged that they'll be on our screening form. They've gone through the process and they're just waiting for us to call for an appointment. The others, they may have shown interest, but they didn't necessarily follow through. So that list, the number there, I would say probably half of them are valid, and the other half, they may have at one point shown interest and then changed their mind.
So when you say valid, is there...
Valid meaning that I know that they have already met with the school site that they're already with, so they've met with that counselor or AP, and they're going to be on our screening form. So they're pretty serious if they've made it that far.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So that one additional teacher can accommodate those students that are considered valid without increasing these numbers? Because we do want to cap it at some point because of that ratio. So we're looking at not increasing probably over 25, 26?
That's the hope, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is all of this instruction online? I mean, you said there are no packets. Do they ever meet in person?
Yes, so they're required to meet and have a synchronous time with the teacher. So they get their new assignments that way. They turn in their homework that way. They're able to ask questions. It's almost like a period of support, basically, and tutorial. We also offer for kids who are struggling to have, the old term was lab hours, but they can have additional time with their teacher. So maybe my appointment with you is Tuesdays at 1, but I'm falling behind. I'm also going to come in at Wednesday at 1 and Thursday at 1 that week and have more time. And teachers can do this one-on-one, and sometimes they even do it with small group. They'll have 2 to 3 kids with them and work on either similar topics or just help them individually.
Thank you.
It didn't change. It's the same. So a student will meet with their teacher at, let's say, Livingston High School. That's where that student's from. They'll meet there on whatever day it is for amount of time. But after that, is the teacher available to them at other hours online?
So I will say the teachers are amazing about being able, students reach them through email, through text messages, they Zoom with them, they use Google Voice. I purchased Go Guardian for them as well so that they can get on there and see where a kid is having trouble and see their screen. They really do try to meet the student at all times and hours.
So I agree with you on that, that they are they're available to the students if the student reaches out. What if the student's not reaching out, they're not asking questions?
So if a student is not doing those things, they're not showing up to appointments, they're not making educational progress, we have what are called re-engagement strategies. So, and these are primarily teacher-led. They make phone calls home, they contact the student, they contact the parent, they send myself and CWA for Independence High School a notification, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of this student, they're not responding. We do home visits. They track them down. We send home letters home. I actually spoke with 2 parents this week because they received a letter, And I just let them know this is part of our process. If we feel that you're falling behind, we reach out, we set up a meeting. We do parent conferences. They're just called a program evaluation. They have a fancier name, but we do that with parents to find out why is the student not progressing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So I would like to recap for you just where we started and where we are at the moment. Earlier this year in 2021, we started talking about the possibility of an alternative program for students in the way of a virtual academy. And I discussed at that early board meeting this year the design thinking process that we were going to follow in order to develop a logical solution for our issue. So that started with a lot of research and understanding our problem and defining the constraints of what we were talking about here and a virtual academy and what that meant and all of those things. We began having stakeholder input sessions in mid-February and went through a series of those through the rest of the month. We did a lot of vetting of digital curriculum, ultimately deciding on Edmentum. We launched the pilot program using Edmentum that fourth quarter and had a group of teachers working with that and working out the bugs and seeing if this could be a solution as a possible curriculum for a program moving forward. And then we continued its use in summer school with Edmentum and further learned from it and had staff using it and providing feedback around it. Still just trying to gather all our details to formulate a picture for what a future program might entail. Given our work on this topic over the course of this year, these last few months, we're looking to build on, we're now at the model prototype phase of design thinking, and what's come to light is that it makes the most sense to build on our existing structure around Independence High School to create an Independence Academy. There are lots of unknowns right now related to the governor's recent announcement regarding vaccines. If a mandate were to be enacted and the district were suddenly facing a demand for 10%, 20% of our students, that would be like closing down one of our high schools and opening another, which is no small undertaking. And certainly this needs to be done strategically and appropriately with a lot of information not known at this time. There are implications around screening students, our special populations, addressing all of the needs that Principal Rose spoke to, attendance requirements, what programs would be offered in additional to core that the Academy kids would get to partake in, CTE, graduation requirement and how that works in, elective offerings, hands-on experiential opportunities to really build out a comparable program to a comp site for Academy kids. It was about this time last year, Superintendent Peterson directed that we provide an alternative plan for students that can be scaled very quickly if needed due to our ever-changing conditions. And we have that now. Our current IS model will take us through June 2022, and it's a program in its current state that can scale very quickly into 22-23 if the governor's mandate becomes an implemented reality. And so that is a good thing, that we have that much so far. In looking at 2023 and beyond, we can envision a potential launch of Independence Academy that offers a hybrid, personalized approach, more of a college-like feel, with students attending Independence Academy and perhaps doing certain courses online and certain CTE elective courses in person at a site, attending Merced College, following a flexible schedule to really meet whatever individualized program is going to best help them meet their post-secondary goals. But that is down the road when things settle a little bit. While working toward that end, we will explore programs in schools that are out there currently. Dr. Weimer suggested that we identify some programs in schools that we can go and visit, talk to their staffs, glean some best practices for our district moving forward. So again, that our Independence Academy can be developed strategically and appropriately. So that is the recent update and where we are in the process. Do you have any questions for me?
No questions?
So, Ms. Garman, if this mandate goes through, you said we're going to have to look at that. Are we prepared to take that many more kids into independent study? Or are we not prepared, but planning for it?
There are certainly challenges inherent with that kind of shift in sectioning with enrollments and staffing and the things that go along with that kind of shift. We are fortunate to have a solid structure right now to work with, and with the basic components of that current structure, it can scale quickly. So yes, I believe we would be able to do that. However, I mean, lots of challenges inherent, of course.
Yeah, we're scaling right now. We started off with, I think, 40 at the beginning of the year, and, we're going to be around 200 in another month. The problem is, it will be impossible, next to impossible, for us to pull this off by January. So let's say there was FDA approval next month, and he said, okay, everybody's going to be vaccinated for in-person when we come back after the first of the year. And if you're not, you're going to independent studies. Well, we're more prepared than most districts up and down the state. And it will be, Mr. Pust and I have already had this conversation. It will be next to impossible because we would have to literally start over mid-year. We would have to take everyone back to zero, rebuild the master schedule with the students that want in-person, build that first, and then see where you're at. And, that's just a couple months away. So right now if we're lucky, we are pushing a 20% vaccination rate in our district. Countywide, 12 to 18, it's closer to 30. But even if, our number was the county number, doubling it, that puts 4,000 students on independent studies. That's not okay at any time.
Agreed. And I know that we purchased a lot of stuff during COVID that is going to be useful if we come to that. The other question I have along that, I think it's more for Mr. Peterson and not you, or maybe it's any of you, is
Yeah, I'm good with that.
the virtual academy that we talked about in the past. We could not do it because it'd be more like a charter type of a school, but maybe if there's loopholes, if this happens, we can do something with that, with the loophole that may come up, and have a virtual high school like Clovis or other districts have.
Yeah, I think, as she talked about it toward the end of her presentation, I think there's an opportunity to do that within the independent structure, but that we can't do that right now because we're planning for mass movement.
That type of design you're talking about was more of an original plan in mind with Independent High School's On Track program, where students are doing that type of education, and that we can envision getting there down the road.
Thank you.
And I talked about the January 1st date. If this were to happen in July, yes, we will absolutely be ready for that. But again, we want that number to be as low as possible.
Thank you, Mrs. Garman.
Thank you.
Next, we have Employee Association comment period, DTA.
Good evening, President Pickle, board members, Superintendent Peterson, and Cabinet. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the people that are here waiting to hear me speak. So, good evening to all of you. It's no secret that violence seems to be on the rise in schools these days. Teachers statewide report more aggressive behaviors than ever before, aimed at not only students, but at teachers themselves. This uptick in student violence has teachers on edge. They're worried about their student safety along with their own. Many feel helpless in the face of it and question the choice of their career. I want to be clear. MUHSD teachers love all of their students. We love the students with trauma. We love the students with mental illness. We love our students with disabilities. And we love our difficult students. And yes, we love our violent students. Loving students with abandon is what we do. We're teachers. But sometimes loving someone looks like setting boundaries, reporting dangerous behaviors, enforcing consequences, having hard conversations, standing your ground, or even finding an alternative placement. We, the Teachers Union, urge you, the board, to support safe school environment by allowing administration to remove violent students from school sites until these students have been provided the necessary services needed so that they can control their inclinations to violence. Students and staff should never feel that violence towards them, their coworkers, or their classmates is an accepted proposition. It should not be the norm. And I don't want to say that we want to dismiss the needs of these students. But what I am saying is we need to get these students help. And where they currently are, is simply causing too much disruption, too much angst, anxiety, and lack of desire to come to a place that they should want to be at to learn. This is the statement of MUHSD, DTA, and I would also like to say with regard to Mr. Peterson's statement about worst case scenario come January, we are currently forming a committee to discuss how we will deal as a staff with this impossible proposition. But one thing I can guarantee you is we will come up with a solution. Whether it happens or not, we will have a solution. We will work closely with our district leaders, and our teachers and teachers union will work closely. We're all on the same team on this, and we're going to be there together. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pust. Okay. CSEA?
Can you hear me? And I'm sure you guys are waiting to hear me speak now, right? Okay. All right. All right. Good evening, President Pickle, Ms. Ham, Mr. Valadez, Mr. Lopez, and I'd like to welcome, I'm fixing to butcher your name, Ms. Jaisingha, right?
Jaisingha, thank you.
Okay, to the board, okay? And Mr. Peterson and Cabinet. I also, before I get started, I wanted to thank those that were involved for helping the little Cougars be able to have lighting at night when they are playing football. And tonight I've heard a lot about teachers and students. I've heard very little about the classified. Very little, okay? So CSEA is here tonight to talk about our concerns. One is mental health for all our students that need it. We understand that it has been brought up before, and we asked the board to revisit and ask these 3 questions. 1, how many of our regular students have been referred since the beginning of the school year? 2, how many of our regular students have been seen since the beginning of the school year? And 3, how many of our regular students have been declined from being seen? We're going to talk about liaisons. We need more liaisons to help keep our students and staff safe. We have students carrying weapons because they're in gangs, and we have students carrying weapons to keep themselves safe from the gangs. When you take liaisons away from doing their regular duties to direct traffic at the front gate, to cover breaks and lunches, we have a problem. We need more eyes and ears on campus moving around, checking our bathrooms to make sure our students are not being assaulted, having fight clubs, smoking drugs in the restrooms, or even destroying our restrooms. We need more liaisons to help mentor our students when out of class. This might help with not having to shut down the restrooms. We have too many students to be locking down the restrooms. Again, more eyes. Classified has been asking for protocol for our liaisons and proper training to assist our liaisons with the difficult tasks they have for being eyes and ears for administration and keeping our staff, our campuses safe. Moving on to custodians. We need more custodians. We can't afford classrooms not being cleaned. And again, locking down restrooms because they need cleaning or have been destroyed is unacceptable. When a custodian is absent, our district still goes by the old rule that you have to have custodians absent before, you have to have 2 custodians absent before you can get a 4-hour person. Just for clarification, it's not on all sites, but one site is one site too many. Paraprofessionals. We need more SPED pairs in the classrooms. We have 6 sped paras on each site. One stays in the sped office, then that leaves you with 5 paras, and one of them is a part-time. Atwater, Merced, Golden Valley, Buhack are pushing 200 sped students per site. 17 to 20 students per para, each with a different accommodation. Testing is a big problem. 17 to 20 students with different accommodations for testing. Things that make you say, Our contract and hiring process. We need our contract respected. We need the district to stop interpreting our contract language to benefit what the district is doing at the time. CSE is trying to close the loopholes that the district is taking advantage of. In negotiations, we are not having very much luck. Per district lawyer, they like things the way they are. I could give you the spiel about the classified on the front lines. I could tell you that the classified are the first that the students see and the last before going home, but I'm not. Why? Because you already know. It's time for the district to stop and do the right thing. You look at the classified, you lock the classified out for the 2021 negotiations. You offered us pennies for the one-time off salary for the 21-22 and gave the teachers, and let's not forget the district office management, $3,500 off salary. Bottom line, this district is going to have to do better. We are demanding you hire according to the needs, even if you have to offer a bonus to get people to sign on. Oh, and I want to let you know about summer school. It was a flop. To hear that grades were lost for our students, and then students were put in Math 2 when they flunked Math 1, if you'd have worked with us, it wouldn't have went down like that. Classified are tired of working shorthanded and being unappreciated. While the district continues to engage in nepotism and cronyism, violating our contract language and disrespecting and bullying classified workers. Are you guys not asking why is negotiations going on so long? The bottom line is we feel like our leaders have let us down. Our students, our community, and all staff deserve better. It's time now for a change.
Thank you. Next, we have a consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second the agenda with some questions.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that's in here as part of the agenda is the SRO contracts with Merced and Atwater, and I believe that they've previously been negotiated. There are not dollar amounts associated with
Erin, it's kind of hard to hear you.
Sorry, I'll do better. My question is in regards to the SRO contracts with the City of Merced and the City of Atwater. I believe they've previously been negotiated and there's not a dollar amount with these. However, I know we had formerly discussed redefining these roles, perhaps replacing SROs with liaisons, and I'm not sure where we are in that discussion. And obviously, safety of staff and students is paramount and we heard a little bit about it tonight. There have been incidents on campus, and we want everyone at all of our sites to be safe. So I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion around what exactly this means in the consent agenda tonight, and if we are still looking at revising language and or what happened to the thought of putting an additional liaison on campuses.
Well, several of these are missing a dollar amount, so I don't know if we can approve without a dollar amount, and if we're going to have a discussion, then do we need to pull the item from the agenda?
Yeah, let's do one at a time. Mr. Weimer can answer the first part.
The contract that is in there right now is the framework that lasts for 3 years that basically guides the overall agreement between the city and the district. It is not protocols on how they do their particular job. That would be something that would happen outside of that contract. And it does not have a dollar amount because it is a unique amount each year. So you're only doing the general overview contract. It will come back when the city gives us the actual addendum for each year that gives you the actual dollar amount for that particular year. And those have not come to us from the cities yet.
Because I remember last time the contract from the city of Atwater was egregious and we just rejected it. So I'm not sure what we're agreeing to here, since, like I said, there's no dollar amount. And I guess I'm not fully understanding what you're saying.
I was going to ask the same question, and if we needed to pull it to get further clarification before we vote on it.
Are all the ones that are missing dollar amounts the same type of contract?
Yes, they're the framework that basically says that we would be paying for an officer, and then they actually make the calculation each year of what that cost would be, and they give us an addendum each year. It's a 3-year contract, and then each year you get an addendum that would come before you that actually has the dollar amounts on it.
Is there a timing issue on this, Mr. Weimer?
They're on our campus right now, and we're paying them, so I don't know that it would matter if we pulled it off a year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Whether it's approved now or in November, is that going to make any difference?
That would make much of a difference.
Okay.
Well, the one for Atwater goes through 27, which is also, and the one for Merced through 26.
It's not just the SRO contracts, there's several of them.
Yeah.
They don't have dollar amounts.
Not every contract is going to be a contract that's financially binding. So there are things that might be an agreement that does not have dollar amounts on it, and you still have to have those come before the board.
Is there anyone who's opposed to approving the contract with the dollar amounts coming back to us later? It's basically an approval of the agreement, correct?
Correct. You're agreeing to the frameworks of it. We are not agreeing to the individual contract for that particular year, which comes in the addendum.
So just to add to Aaron's comment then, as far as the liaisons, which was brought up tonight on behalf of CSEA, with the ESSER funds that we're going to be approving tonight, the plan, could some of those ESSER funds be utilized? Obviously 20% of those have to go to address instructional loss. That leaves the 80% that can be used for other needs. Could we allocate some of those monies towards, the purchase of additional liaisons at, I guess, district-wide, to address some of the concerns that were brought forward tonight?
So I guess the answer would be yes, but as we get into the ESSER fund discussion, there are other funds out there that we would need to use first. So I would not be recommending using ESSER funds, but the answer is yes, there would be funds available if that was the direction we wanted to go.
Okay. So then just to be clear, on Aaron's point and Julio's point then, we're just talking about framework on these contracts, and then it's going to come back to us next month as far as dollar amounts.
I will make sure that they have the addendums to us before the next board meeting.
And then Dr. Weimer, what's happening in Livingston?
We are still waiting for them to, they've had some staffing changes at the city level, and so we are still waiting for them to be able to post and go through the process to hire a position out there.
So what would be the situation if we approve the contract and the cost comes back and we don't like the cost and we're already in an agreement?
All of the agreements include a 90-day exit clause at any time by either party.
Okay.
Say that again?
All of the contracts include a 90-day exit clause by either side. So even though it's a multi-year contract, we do have the right to terminate within the contract.
Okay.
So if it's brought back to us with the cost next month, we're in good standing.
We would be within a couple of months, yes.
Yeah.
Who is it that reaches out to the police department
For what purpose?
for the SRO contracts?
It's a combination of either myself or Ms. Sharp from the CWA office.
I think one of the things we were looking at last time was changing some of the language to make sure that SROs are a positive presence on our campuses, and I'd like to make sure that we do that before we do a blanket approval.
Mrs. Johnson, do you want to speak to that?
Is it on? Yes. Okay, we did provide some draft language of more student-friendly terms that we would like to see in the contract, but like Dr. Weimer said, we are already under contract, so we can't change the wording at this time. We are meeting with SROs monthly. Ms. Sharp is running those meetings, and we're focusing on building relationships with kids and being more of a positive role model instead of always looking at punitive.
And we still have input on who the officer is that's on site.
Our staff participated in interviews for all of the SROs that are currently on our campuses.
Great.
So the police department doesn't just send whatever officer they want?
No. We, with Merced PD, we were able to sit on interviews and pick our top candidates, and then from that point, the Merced Police Department assigned them to campuses. And then with Atwater PD, our, I believe both Mrs. Euchre and Mr. Theodosio were on those interviews as well and got to pick their SROs.
And if there's an issue mid-year, that officer could be.
Yes,
Nice.
either myself or Ms. Sharp is in communication with Lieutenant Foster at Merced PD.
And I think in years past, we've also felt there was a lack of attendance at a lot of our campuses. Has that gotten better this year?
Are you talking about with the SROs?
Yes.
We've asked for coverage when we don't have an SRO, and they're very good about covering for each other. You know, if they are out for training or something, they don't provide necessarily another officer, but we don't get charged for that day that an officer does not come to our campus. I believe that you're referring to BUHAC 2 years ago when the officer that was assigned here was not in attendance. That was the problem, but that has been resolved.
And both city managers I've met with, and they are well aware of these issues, everything you have discussed, and been very, very helpful, especially in Merced, Stephanie Dietz, and making sure we either get the coverage or we don't get billed, and understanding the kind of officers we need.
Thank you. That's
Mrs.
very
Johnson,
helpful.
just real quick. So I know that SROs, they're there as a perception of safety. There's somebody else that's an authority figure. Have we ever seen or have any data that supports, like when they're not here, that there is an escalation of things that happen on campus versus when they are here with their presence, or does that even exist?
I would have no way of tracking that that data. That would be very difficult.
I'm curious if we've encouraged any of the SROs to go through the Nurtured Heart program as well, or if that's even within our authority.
I think it's definitely something that we could look into.
Do we have issues, recent issues with SROs? Is that why we're?
No, I will say that the Black Parallel School Board brought it to our attention a couple of years ago because we weren't really tracking interactions with our SROs. And so when they asked me for data, it was difficult for me to provide it because we weren't tagging that in Aries. So I have worked with all of our student support APs. They now track it. So if a student is referred to an SRO, it could just be for a simple conversation, and it's not always negative. You know, sometimes we have students who are at risk of suicide, and the officer has to do an evaluation to determine whether or not that student needs to be 5150. That is a positive interaction. We need those people on campus to help us with that. If a student is referred for arrest for, let's say, a truancy violation, four-step truancy, it's common practice that we do arrest them so we can get them into the probation system, so we can get them support. We now track that in Aries. When they're out and they're mingling with students during break or at lunch, we don't put that into Aries. So I think we have the data, and when I report on the data, it's going to be very important for me to look through each of the narratives and say, well, was this a positive interaction, or was this only because we were referring and the student ended up getting arrested? But I do want to point out that they help us a lot too with conversations with students about potential consequences, and it doesn't mean that they're arresting them or, you know, starting that process.
I work with an employee who credits the SRO on his campus for him graduating, for him going on to college, and just keeping him on a positive path and being a presence and a person that acknowledged him daily, said hello, kind of kept him going. I'm really glad to know that our district is involved in the placement of the officers, making sure we're getting folks who want to work with kids and be a positive influence.
No, I think that for the most part, and I've had same parents in the Livingston area have come up to me and asked why there's no SRO, and they said they've had their kids have positive interactions with them, and they are doing better because of them. And that's why I asked, have there been issues? Because I don't hear those. I haven't heard any issues recently. I'm sure there could be some, but I've only heard of positive interactions with the SROs, and in at least 3 instances.
I think it's like anything. You might have a small number of negative interactions, and those are the ones that get talked about the most.
Yeah, it's great to hear both of you say that. Yeah, there have been issues. Things happen on campuses, and officers have to intervene sometimes in a very aggressive manner to keep everyone safe. You saw that happen at El Capitan. It's not easy. It's not easy for our staff to have to respond to chaos like that. Whether you're a classified employee, whether you're an administrator, there is no training in the world that is going to help us in that sort of chaos. Everyone just does the best they can, and certainly an SRO is most prepared for that.
And I also want to mention that we did train all of our administrators over the summer on the proper use of an SRO too. So trying to keep school investigations separate than police investigations, when to refer, when to not refer. So all of our administrators were trained, and then we shared that presentation with all of our current SROs as well.
And I just to add to that, I do, I guess it's good for staff to help choose the SROs, but maybe sometimes the police department themselves know who the best person for the job would be because they've been working with them.
It was a joint effort.
Okay, are we comfortable with proceeding then? Okay.
Yes.
So I think we have a motion and a second, so we'll call for the vote then, please, Mrs. Roebuck.
Can you clarify, please, before we're keeping it on the?
Yes, we're voting to approve the consent agenda with that item. Motion carries 4-1 with one abstention. Or one no, I'm sorry. 4-1 with one no. Action agenda. We have trustee boundary analysis. Dr. Weimer?
Ms. Rohrback, do I need to advance the slides?
Can you advance the slides for him, Miguel?
Is there any way we can take like a 5-minute break, or is that possible?
We can. Yeah, we can temporarily adjourn for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Restroom in here.
Okay, we'll reconvene 8:01.
And very quickly, Ms. Pickle, I would like to introduce Ken Reynolds. He is with Schoolworks, which is the company that does our boundaries. If you look on our website and you look for our school locator, they do that for us. Every 10 years, we have to review our Board of Trustees boundaries. So these are not our school boundaries. These are your boundaries for your elections. And to make sure that the census hasn't changed data too much. And Ken is going to be presenting the information for us tonight.
Okay, Ken, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to share a quick PowerPoint to highlight the results of our 2020 census analysis. All right, can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, here we go. As an introduction, I'm Ken Reynolds, president of Schoolworks. And so we're working with most of the districts there in Merced County to do an analysis of the new 2020 census data. And the key factor we're looking at is the total population in each of the trustee areas. And so if the numbers are not balanced, districts would be required to implement new maps by a deadline of February 28th. And this process is done every 10 years just to make sure that each trustee has equal representation in terms of the number of voters that are electing them. So the possible results of the analysis is they determine that if you have a peak deviation of less than 10% between the largest area and the smallest area, that it's still considered balanced. Anything in excess of 10% needs to be brought back into compliance. So this is the Ed Code 5019.5 that is the regulations that we're following when it comes to doing this process and the steps we go through. This page here showing the redistricting steps shows the work we as your demographic consultant have completed in order to bring you the information in our presentation tonight. So this map shows your current trustee areas. Oops, let me go back. Each color represents one of the trustee areas. And this is not new information, right? This is your current maps that we're just representing in our PowerPoint this evening. This page here shows the new results of the census from 2020. So for the district, there's a total population of 180,758. And so when we divide that among each of the trustee areas, we're looking for an ideal population of 36,152. And so for each trustee area, we show the actual population, compare it to the ideal population, and then calculate the difference, which is called the deviation. And then when we compare the largest and the smallest, our peak deviation is 3,551, which is represented as 9.82%. So you're only one of the two districts we've looked at in the Central Valley so far that have a deviation of less than 10%. So no changes will be needed. The information on this page shows a lot more of the comprehensive demographic data that's available from the census for each of the trustee areas, and it's broken down by racial and ethnic categories for the total population, for the 18 and over population in the middle, and at the bottom is the citizen voting age population, which is actually based on a survey and is not as comprehensive as the top two sections. And so that is the report we have to share with you this evening. And it is our next steps. What we will be doing is sending a copy of this report to the county superintendent to show that you've done your analysis and that no changes are needed. And with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Close to 10% if we would choose to do this now.
I'm sorry, I
Did you
couldn't
hear
quite
her,
hear.
Ken?
No.
It's a kind of a sound issue.
Mr. Weimer, you want to answer that?
To do it now or not to do it now? There's no guarantee that the next census will actually increase the deviation, so we don't know that, and that again is 10 years away. We don't know that in that 10 years that the deviation will actually not shrink and then would actually exceed that 10%.
When is the last time we had to do this?
We have to do it every 10 years.
No, but the last time we had to redraw boundaries.
That's past my memory. Did we redo the board boundaries though too at the same time? So we think we did it when we opened El Capitan, that when we drew new school boundaries, we actually redrew the Board of Trustees boundaries too.
I believe it was in 2011.
Oh, so 10 years ago.
That's 10 years ago, yeah. But as long as the growth is balanced, we can still be under the 10% 10 years from now.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second it.
Hold on just a second. Ken?
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
who made the motion to approve?
Aaron, seconded by Richard.
Thank you.
So we'll call for the vote then, please. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next, we have ESSER 3 expenditure plan. Dr. Weimer.
Good evening. So before you, we have a summary of the ESSER 3. The first slide here gives you acceptable uses for the ESSER 3 funds. We did get 24,800,000+, 6 million for learning loss. So a combination of the two is just over $30 million for the ESSER 3 funds. 85% of that must be used for in-person learning, and it must be spent by September of 2024. So we do have other plans and other funds that we are using probably before this. The expanded learning opportunity funds have a shorter deadline of this year. ESSER 2 funds will be running out probably by the end of this year as well. So we do have other funds that have shorter deadlines than this one. The focus area is preventing and mitigating strategies to operate schools for in-person learning. 20% of your funds must be used to address learning loss, academic, social, and emotional and mental health needs, and then other allowable expenses. There is no supplement or supplant requirement for these funds, which is going to be important when I show you one of the slides, which means we can pay for things that we paid for in the past using this money to continue those services. Funds are subject to pre-approval for items over $5,000, and funds are subject to time and effort accounting, which means if we're paying staff, we have to do a lot of paperwork to track how we're paying for that staff and that they're only doing things that are agreed to under the plan. This is only the beginning of the discussion because of the extended date for this particular set of funds. Most of the money that is included in this plan is not something that we will be spending in this particular school year. We have other funds that have shorter expiration dates that we will be doing first. So we do have more time that we can continue throughout the LCAP process. I will be working with Dr. Aguilar to have more conversations about how we want to use this funds as it becomes closer to the time where we would actually start to use those. You must have board approval, though, before October 29th. So we do have to have a basic plan in place, but as noted on the CDE frequently asked questions, the ESSER 3 expenditure plans are considered a living document and as such should be revised as needed and address the changing and newly emerging needs of the LEA students. So as we get closer to the end of this year and moving into next year when we would probably start accessing these funds, we don't know exactly what the world's going to look like at that particular point. We can revise this plan and there is no issue with changing things and updating it as we go. So we will have time to have more input, more discussions, and look at where things actually are as we get closer to the end of this school year and have updates to the plan for you before we actually start spending any of the money. Even though we have a few years to spend this money, 2024, please remember these are one-time funds, and so we do not want to be using them for ongoing expenses unless we have identified an ongoing source of funds that would pick those up once these funds are expended. And this is like trying to get reception on my TV at home. Make sure that the antenna is in the right place. Enrollment versus average daily attendance. So this gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what's been going on for us for COVID. The blue line right here is our enrollment. And unlike most of the state of California, you see that our enrollment continues to go up every year. About 30 to 40% of the school districts in California are in declining enrollment, which means they have fewer students every year. That is not true here. We do have increasing enrollment. The red line is the ADA for the past couple of years, and that is how we get funded, the average daily attendance. So there's a gap between enrollment and how many students are actually on campus on any given day, and that's this gap between the two lines. This is when COVID hit us right here, where the yellow triangle basically is going to start. And what happened was the state froze us at ADA at that particular point in time, which was 10,165 students. So even though we continued to grow in enrollment, we did not get any additional funds for that increase in enrollment. So this yellow area is what we would have normally had in a normal year that we did not get in increased ADA last year. The blue area is what we're looking at not getting this year compared to what a normal year would look like. Because in a normal year, this red line would continue to go up. Our average daily attendance would mirror our enrollment. Luckily, we can hold to this last year's 10,165 students, so we can get that from the state last year, even if our numbers go down. And we were only at 10,019 when we ran this report 2 weeks ago. So for the start of school this year, we are actually down in average daily attendance from where we were before. We're up in enrollment, but we're down in attendance, and a large part of that was for quarantine students, not students who are actually COVID positive, but for students who are on quarantine because of close contacts. So we do see that decline in enrollment, in attendance, not enrollment, but attendance, which is how we get paid. But luckily, this gap right here, we can claim last year's ADA. So we can't get less than last year's ADA, that 10,165. The good news is last week, we run the numbers again for this last week, we were at 1,200. 10,200. So we were up over where that was last year. So we are actually starting to see students come back and having fewer students on quarantine. So we are starting to tick that way. But it would have to stay that way for the rest of the year for us to start to get more of our funds back from ADA. But we're never going to reach this level where we would normally be during this particular school year. We might next year. We might get that ADA back up to where it should be, but we're not going to for this particular year. So what that means is we still section and pay for all the staff that we had prior to this, even though we're going to probably get less money in ADA. So what that does do is it allows us to do continuity of service. We can use the funds, the ESSER funds, to be able to continue services at the same level we had them before, even though we might get less ADA for them. That's not normal for federal funds. Usually they say you have to do extra stuff, but for the COVID funds, you can continue the level of services you had before, even though your money is not coming in. Another one that shows you kind of where we were using some of the funds, not the ESSER 3 funds, but some of the other funds that we have right now. For comprehensive sites, for 21-22, we initially do an allocation to sites for sections, for teaching sections, at 28 students per FTE. An FTE is not an actual person, it's 5 sections. So for every 5 sections, it was 28 students, and that's how we actually allocate the amount of sections out to the sites. That does not mean that class sizes are at 28. I am not indicating that in any way, shape, or form. I am not saying that. Our class sizes average is not 28. But that is what we actually staff at, is the FTE is 28. The reason that the class average and the FTE ratio don't match is because we have academic support classes that run low. We have special education teachers who are co-teaching and don't have any students in certain classes. All of those types of things are why the FTA ratio and your class average don't necessarily match up. But what you can see is we then use Title I funds to bring that number down a little bit, and it costs us about $2,600,000 in Title I funds to bring it down, and then we use ESSER 2 funds, the funds before the ESSER 3 ones, to bring that ratio down. That does bring class size down, but it's not saying that class sizes are at 25. That's not the indication for that. But to bring that FTE ratio down when we give the allocation out costs us about $2.6 million this year in Title I funds and about $2.8 million in ESSER 2 funds. And that's to just slightly reduce the class sizes from the previous year.
So the 28 students per FTE, is that the ratio that we're looking at for independent study? Class size?
Unfortunately, no, because they will go and take the lower number because we've actually done that. So it isn't based on what funds you used, it's actually based on the ratio that actually exists, and it's whatever our ADA is to staffing. It doesn't matter where you funded it from.
So that number is actually lower than this 28?
Correct, it would
Yeah.
be the 25.
Yeah, so that's what we need to look at for independent study.
Correct.
Yeah.
We are mostly offering extra periods to teachers to make up to allow for smaller class sizes, correct? As opposed to hiring a lot of new teachers.
It depends. We usually let the sites and the departments have an option. If they would like to, and many of them do like to, they will then do the extra periods rather than hiring more staff if they have teachers who are interested. There are departments who do not like to take extra periods, and there are teachers who don't like to take an extra section. So if you did not have enough people interested in a department to cover the need, then you would actually go out and hire. So we did hire a few new, but not very many. Most of them were extra sections.
So I'm asking this question for the purpose of when this funding runs out, then what happens?
Yes, when the purpose of when this funds runs out, to be able to keep it at that level, we would be tapping into that new supplemental and concentration fund monies that we would be getting, or the current LCAP monies to be able to stay at those ratios.
In general, what do you think, how many students per class do you think we were able to come down this year as compared to past years?
Yeah, I can't compare anything to last year because of the difference, distance learning. But in past years, we are probably down, and it's not going to sound like much, probably 2 to 3 students on the average, but 2 to 3 students in a class of 34,
sure,
36
that's 10%,
is a decent amount. And then again, that still does not mean to in any way, shape, or form imply that there are not classes of 36 and 38 in different places on our campus. There are master scheduling issues that don't allow you to even things out. There are singleton classes where you don't have enough students to split it into 2 classes. There are places where that is.
But there are far less of those.
There are far less of those, and for all of those, there are also classes that are running at 18 and 20. so they balance out in the overall look at things. So for the ESSER funds, what we are looking at as far as the initial plan is extending the current one-time funds. So the things that we have under the ELO plan, or we're using ESSER 2 funds, that we would extend those types of things out for another couple of years. So for summer school, we are looking at ELO for 22. This coming summer, we'll pay for that. But summer school in 23 and 24 then would come out of the ESSER 3 funds. After school and Saturday Academy activities this year are coming out of the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant funds. The following 2 years, they would come out of the ESSER 3 funds. The ongoing paraprofessionals and bus drivers that we have hired this year, the paraprofessionals were hired out of the ELO funds. The bus drivers are going to be hired out of the LCAP funds. Those would be paid for by ESSER for 2 years before moving over into the LCAP, and the LCAP would take it from there. Temporary increases in staff for COVID testing and monitoring. So we do have therapy travelers, which is providing us with 3 nurses currently that we have that are used for that. And we have COVID teams that are responsible for going to each site and doing testing. So any of those that we need to continue into the future, the ESSER 3 plan would be able to carry those forward. Hopefully we don't have to carry many of those testing requirements forward and past this 1 year. The extra Sierra Vista services that we have this year would be picked up for 2 more years out of the ESSER 3 funds. Educational technology and expenses and infrastructure upgrades that we're using ESSER 2 money for right now are Chromebooks. We would be using ESSER 3 money for the next 2 years. That would then go back to lottery money after the ESSER 3 funds are expended, which is where we used to buy the Chromebooks from, and then continuing any PPE supplies. One of the reasons we are putting a draft plan together, I call it a draft, but it has to be done now because that's the timeline. But we do expect to make changes to this because I can already tell you some of this is going to change. The educational technology expenses like the Chromebooks, we have already received other funding which we're going to be able to use to pay for the Chromebooks. So that's $1 million less that we would use for this money. So throughout the spring, as we're having those conversations, we can say, how do we redirect that money into different uses and then update the plan? Other costs that are in here would be replacing the HVAC units. We're looking anywhere between 60 and 70% of our HVAC units are past their replacement life. And so we haven't had funds to be able to do that. We do need to start making replacements in the HVAC systems. And then matching funds for additional healthcare centers if it's included in the infrastructure bill. U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein has been working with Townsend Group for us to potentially include having health centers in each of our community like we have in Livingston. And if they are able to include that in the infrastructure bill, then we would be able to match some of that money and possibly get a health center in each one of our communities like we have in Livingston.
Do you mind if I ask a few questions, or would you rather wait?
It is your choice.
Okay. The new / ongoing paraprofessionals, are these at all sites, and how many?
There was 1 additional paraprofessional hired at each site through the Expanded Learning Grant. There was a 10% requirement that had to be used for that.
Okay. And the bus drivers, I know there's been a shortage, but it seems like we've covered pretty well in our district.
We've hired a couple new ones this year out of ESSER 2 funds, and the ESSER 3 would continue, and then they would need to be picked up by the LCAP.
Are the Sierra Vista services being utilized and accepted? Is everyone pleased on campuses? When you say they're transferred to Sierra Vista, is there someone on site from Sierra Vista? Yes. 2.5 days a week? Okay. Okay.
Yes, the reference on that particular line, we have 3 additional, we have our regular student support managers, but we have 3 from Sierra Vista that work through the 7 sites.
Okay. And as we're replacing HVAC units, are we putting in a more sophisticated,
Cleaning.
yeah, air
Filtration system?
filtration? Thank you, filtration.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
They will be able to handle the most modern things that are out there. We have HVAC systems right now that we can't put high-grade filters in because that system can't run them and they don't fit. These would be able to then run any of the filters that are out there that we would like to be using.
Okay. One last question. On summer school, our offerings varied widely by campus depending on what teachers were willing to work this summer. And these were predominantly supposed to be kids who were making up credits. But I think it was wildly successful in terms of getting kids back to campus and getting them re-engaged. And it was really neat to see some of the not your basic curriculum courses offered, such as shop classes and theater and whatnot. And I just wondered if there's, I know it goes back to the DTA contract and whether or not kids are allowed to earn new credits and whatnot, but if there's a potential, if the shop teacher at Atwater is teaching but they're not at LCAP, that students from LCAP could go to Atwater or things of that nature, just so we give every kid every opportunity if they want it.
Yes.
Yeah, I can answer that. We have a framework that we've put together for summer school that will emulate what we did this last summer. I will be happy to follow up with the report, but to answer your question directly, we will be offering those enrichment opportunities to students as long as those classes are full. In other words, last year we were able to accommodate all teachers that wanted to teach summer school regardless of the number of students that they had. And this year we will not be able to accommodate that, but we will for sure, when we go through the registration process, offer those enrichment opportunities.
So if the shop class at Atwater is offered and only 5 kids from Atwater want to take it, it theoretically would die. But if 20 more kids from around the district wanted to take it, could they, and then you'd offer it?
We could definitely look at the logistics, it's again driven by logistics and our busing and what we can and can't do that way.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
On these, the presentation that we have, it's in the that's in the agenda, and this one are a little bit different. What is this a more updated one that was printed and put here?
Yes, that's correct. The summary of the slides that you have here, there have been some updates to the actual amounts, which are in the new one here, and this is the actual template we have to use. And so it took a little bit of time getting it from the company that actually puts it together. So that's why you got it a little bit late. There are a few variations on the amounts between the two.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I was noticing those differences in amounts.
Yeah, this is the one you're approving, the one that's in your packet.
Okay, all right. It's got less for HVAC replacement on the updated one.
Correct.
And question on, I know that you said earlier we need to be careful with how the funds are spent and not use them for something that's a continuous thing. So for like example for liaisons, is there money here that can be used for additional liaisons?
The question is, could there be? Yes. The recommendation would be that we would probably use the increase in supplemental and concentration funds for that if we decided to do that, because that's a more stable source of funding.
Yeah, any increase we do like that, and we are well aware that, in fact, Mrs. Ballinger will be forwarding a new position to Mrs. McCutcheon in the next couple of days. We're aware of those needs. Grounds, custodial, possibly counseling, more FTEs for staff in the future to keep class sizes as low as possible, which is what I believe is the number one thing we need to focus on. We're using a lot of this money right now to take care of those needs, and this money's going to go away.
Right.
And in a few years, we're going to be left holding the bag, I'm telling you right now, because we incrementally, and Cabinet gets probably very annoyed with my stance on this, we can't solve every problem with a new body. You know, we have to look at our procedures and the way we do things and productivity and efficiency, because we can't go above 80% of our total budget on employee salaries and benefits. We just can't do it. That's the number. And we're not quite there yet. There's a little room, and the state is giving us some ongoing funds, about $3 million, that we don't even have the guidelines and rules. You know, they give it to us and they don't tell us how to, you know, what the rules are. So yes, we can put liaisons toward that money. I think everyone here would agree that we should take that off the top of that $3 million. But for the rest of it, I think we need to have a conversation with classified, with DTA, with our parents, with our students on what their needs are. We bring that information, or what they think the money should be used for. We bring that information back to you, and you make the final decision. But that's it in a nutshell going forward.
And just to add, Dr. Weimer, so obviously with these ESSER funds and all these emergency monies that we're getting now, it's to address the immediate need that we have now. So, you know, to go back to the liaisons, to go back to paraprofessionals, those are needs that we have now, because hopefully as things start to, you know, come back to normal to some extent, you know, there may not be a need for all the liaisons, all these extra paraprofessionals 3 years down the road, that by that time we can make a decision as, you know, if we're going to cut back, because there's not as an immediate need. You know, so we are addressing SEL needs for all of our kids. We are providing SEL training for all of our staff, and that's fantastic, you know. But once again, this money is going to be exhausted for 3 years, that we can look at starting to cut some of those systems down as kids start to become more acclimated with what's going on in the regular school setting. Second thing is, some of these items on this list, are they duplicate items from our LCAP now, like the nutrition? You know, so we are doing the breakfast and lunch, but that's already LCAP monies. So will we end up freeing up these extra monies to allocate somewhere else? Because I know it's a working document, you know, so will we end up looking at that and pulling those aside for some other uses?
Right now, they were done in conjunction. So to basically feed all of our students with the meal reimbursement that we're getting from the state right now, because we don't get reimbursed for all of our students, we only get reimbursed for some of them. Both the LCAP and this ESSER funds money was estimated to be what we would need to make sure that that's whole. If that changes again, we will bring this back in the spring as we're getting input and be able to update those numbers more realistically after we've done it for this year, and then we would know what we would need in the second and third year also. And the only thing I would say, I agree with you that we have certain needs right now, but I would also remind people that if there are actually employees in a position, laying off a position that actually has a person in it is one of the hardest things you will ever have to do. We try to lay off positions that don't have people in them, but if we were to hire liaisons and there are people in them 3 years from now, that would be very, very difficult to lay them off because money ran out.
So on here, you have extra academic counseling support. What would that consist of?
Let me go to the... so you're looking at the extra counseling support. That's the extra sections that counselors get to do expanded services. So they stay, they come several days early at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, and stay after school.
Thank you. And then can you just clarify what paraprofessionals are?
Yeah, so a paraprofessional would be an adult that would be in a classroom that would help the teacher and help students with whatever it is that they need. Paraprofessionals are found in a regular education classroom They're found with ELL students or English language learner students, and they're also found with our special education students.
So it's teachers' aides.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Academic support.
And I believe the only regular ed classes we have them in right now are at Merced Adult School. I think on our comprehensive sites, they're just in our EL classes and our special ed classes.
You already mentioned that Chromebooks, you identified another source, so that would be taken off of here, right?
It would in the spring. We do have a timeline to put a plan in, so we do kind of need to submit the plan, but just this last, what day did that come in? 2 days ago? Just 2 days ago, we got the news that we're going to be able to get that. So $1 million of that will come off, and in the spring, we'll be able to figure out where that $1 million
So only
should
1
go.
million, because we have 2 million.
It's only a 1 year from this funding source, so it'll only cover the ones for this year.
All right, so I can get clarification. So we can vote on this knowing that it, like you said, it's a living document that can be adjusted as necessary.
We put in the very front pages on both the presentation and in the plan. This is a living document that will be updated throughout the LCAP process in the spring. As we get closer to when we would actually start tapping into most of this money, it can be revised as many times as we need to bring back to you.
Yeah, because I know that I had asked the question that Richard asked before about not having to use LCAP funds anymore because this was coming. So that would give us room to take stuff off that's already covered by LCAP or vice versa.
Correct. And unfortunately, things were a lot easier to predict 2 years ago. The crystal ball in the COVID area is very difficult to predict what everything is going to be like even 6 months out. So you have to be able to come back and make updates and make changes because we're not exactly sure what 6 months from now looks like.
And the Wi-Fi network support, is that what we had talked about before, Alan?
The Wi-Fi network?
Wi-Fi network support, we have
No.
1.5 on there.
Yeah, no, those are not for towers.
No,
We have infrastructure on our system that
Oh.
does the Wi-Fi on our campuses.
At the sites, okay.
And basically is the backbone for the wireless that gets broadcast out. So the Verizon wireless and MiFi still come through our system. Correct? And they're filtered through our system and then goes back out to the student. But it's the backbone that we have on our campuses, our servers, our switches, all the different infrastructure that hasn't been replaced in 5 or 6 years that needs to be upgraded and replaced because of the increased amount of pressure we're putting on it. That's what this is for. This is not for towers in the community.
Got it. Thanks for the clarification.
I said something techie that you liked or didn't like.
No, it's going to see if there are any other questions.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then the superintendent recommends that the board approve the ESSER 3 expenditure plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll call for the vote, please.
Yes?
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next, we have credential waivers. Mrs. Ballinger.
Good evening. Under the provisions of regulations from the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the Board of Trustees must take action on each request for a variable term waiver. The Commission on Teacher Credentialing requires that the waivers be requested for individuals not fully credentialed in a specific area. The district's practice is not to request waivers except in areas where there is a shortage of available candidates. We are requesting 2 additional waivers in the area of an EL authorization for CTE credentialed teachers. David Brantley is teaching in a CTE position at Livingston High School. He's in the Career Technical Education area of Arts, Media, and Entertainment. Upon clearing his CTE credential, the EL authorization will be embedded in it. And then Jose Flores was offered a CTE position at Livingston High School to teach career technical education in the area of public service, and his also will have the EL authorization embedded in his credential. The superintendent recommends the board approve the waiver as submitted for the 21-22 school year.
So moved.
Second.
I will call for the vote then, please.
Let me vote, let me vote.
And motion carries 5-0. Before we move on to superintendent's report, Mrs. Ham is going to read the donations.
Thank you. Merced Union High School District would like to thank the following for their donations to Atwater High School: Valdez Dairy and Luis Lopez, Margaret Sanchez, William and Dina Ray, Amarant's Propane Service, Mr. Leonard T. Mendonça, Martinez Tool Company, Mike and Shelley Vieira, Manuel and Carlene Avila, Donald and Janice Gibson, the NRA Foundation, the Running House, Connie Mobley and Deanna Bing, and Karen Bazzini, along with Alan Brooks, who made a donation to Golden Valley High School. At Livingston High School, the Livingston Vikings Youth Cheer and Kent and Barbara Christensen made donations. And then at Merced High School, Randolph Bardini, Mary Camper, Chris McLean, Leola Leap, Albert Bardini, Lisa and Mary Bennett, Sharon Sanchez, Nancy and Kenji Goodman, Hannah Moretti and Locaretti Family Foundation, and Cindy Ramirez. And quite a few of these went towards various different scholarships: Vince Fucillo Memorial Scholarship, Mara Sue Mobley Memorial Scholarship, Faye Merritt Williams Memorial Scholarship, Marge and Jack Escala Scholarship, Sam and Lou Dialey Memorial Scholarship, the Goodman Scholarship, the Locaretti and Narayana Locaretti Memorial Scholarship, and Eddie Guerrero Memorial Scholarship. And we appreciate and are grateful for all of the donations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ham, and thank you, donors, for your donation. Superintendent's report, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, President Pickle. First, I'd like to officially welcome Amali to the Board of Trustees. I want to thank you for taking a vested interest in the education of our students. I know that you will do great, and I look forward to working with you and the other board members in keeping the Merced Union High School District a place that students and staff can be proud of. Thanks to Mr. Knott from Merced High School for his presentation on his site's Vision for Readiness. Vision for Readiness, or graduate profiles, is something every site is continuing to implement. The initial critical piece of this work means addressing students' social emotional competencies: self-awareness, self-management, relational skills, responsible decision-making. These are all things that our students need to be successful at the next level. Panorama will provide our staff with actionable data that will lead us to improving SEL in our district. Most of you are familiar with the work we've been doing with the Nurtured Heart approach. Sometimes people confuse Nurtured Heart as being an SEL curriculum. It is not. Nurtured Heart is about relationship building and building self-esteem, and it is the precursor to improving SEL competencies in our students. Our students were out of school for 18 months. Our sites essentially have 2 freshman classes from a socialization point of view. And all of us continue to deal with the stresses of COVID. This is not an easy time for anyone. It's been evident that our students need targeted and consistent support to build and improve their SEL skill set. Recently, El Capitan dealt with a very difficult student altercation on campus. It is behavior that is not acceptable on any of our campuses. While it is imperative that staff is well trained on various techniques to intervene, there is no training in the world that prepares a staff member for that level of chaos. The LCAP staff is to be commended for their swift intervention. There are always lessons to be learned after such events. We are wrapping up a full investigation in which recommendations will be made on how we can better improve our training of staff, our communication protocols, and needed supervision, increased supervision, and most importantly, addressing students' SEL needs as a preventative measure. I want to thank the El Capitan staff for their proactive approach to students and staff in the days following the incident, providing forums where staff and students could openly discuss their thoughts and opinions. I have talked to almost all counseling department chairs in the district, and all are reporting increased SEL issues, though many feel like it started to settle down in late September. In addition, I'm meeting with principals and their student advisory groups in the next few weeks in order to get a take on a number of different issues from a student's perspective, including the recent announcement from the governor regarding vaccines. I have asked the county to develop a straightforward survey regarding the vaccine mandate that all districts can use. Consistency across the county on big issues like this is very, very important to our families. We need to know what these preliminary numbers are so we can make appropriate decisions for students, staff, and families going forward. The bottom line, we need to know how many students will not be getting vaccinated. The governor held a press conference and made an announcement regarding a future vaccine mandate. That's it. That's all we have at this point. It was not an administrative order, nor did the legislature take action. There are far too few details for us to begin making a plan in response to this announcement. Case rates have plummeted throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout the nation. I know there is a lot of protocol fatigue out there, but I'm asking everyone to keep it going. We have everyone here and we are operating, not normally, but as well as we can under these circumstances, and that's what's most important. We began the weekly testing protocol this week for staff. We can and will protect our staff's individual rights and keep everyone safe at the same time. For our students, we want them at school every day, learning in person regardless of their vaccination status. As we receive more information about the new mandate, and the board has time to digest the various ramifications for staff and students, I believe it will be important for us to set aside time in the near future for a board study session in order to provide a clear, coherent path forward for our district. That is not time sensitive. That can happen when the board is ready to talk about that. But these are big issues. These issues, if it goes forward as stated, are going to affect our students' lives in a major, major way. And it's going to affect employees and families throughout this district. And we really need to take the time to pursue every avenue and look at it from every angle before we start bringing proposals forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. We have Board Communications, future agenda items. Trustee Valadez.
All right, I also want to welcome Amalie. That's your name, right? I'm sorry.
Amali.
Amali. Okay. I'll try and remember that. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
And then also want to thank everyone who came out today. Most of them are gone already, but thank you for coming out and voicing your opinion. Whether we agree or not, I myself always welcome people to come and voice their opinion. And I'm not saying I don't agree, I'm just saying whether we agree or not, I do always thank people who come out and give, take time out of their schedule to come out and support what they believe in. Thanks, like always, thank you to all who stayed till the end, those who didn't have to, and those who were told by Mr. Peterson that they had to be here. Even Mr. Johnson, who's sleeping over there. Oh, no, you're awake. And also, thanks to all the staff for everything that you do. The board, maybe, and I'll speak for myself. Sometimes we ask questions, or we question sometimes a lot. But I believe that you all are doing what's best for the kids, and and hope that you are. But so am I. When I'm asking questions, I always think students first, staff, and then everyone else. But students first. So thank you all for all that you do, everyone. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Julio. Trustee Lopez.
B. McCutcheon, CSCA 252, we hear you loud and clear. I'm hopeful that in your next session with our negotiating team that we can come to some resolution so we can get this all done, wrapped up, and we can move forward. So like I say, all 5 of us up here hear you loud and clear. Okay, so thank you guys. Continue to advocate for your employees, and we will hopefully, like I say, come to some resolution soon. So thank you guys. Just keep moving forward. I do want to thank all the staff out here tonight for your reports. Like as Julio mentioned, we meet once a month, so we don't always get to see and hear how things are working out. And so I do appreciate your efforts and putting the time into your PowerPoint presentations and keeping us up to date as much as possible with everything that's going on, even during these challenging times. So I thank you for that. Mr. Peterson, myself, and Amali and Julio attended the MCSBA conference this past weekend in Monterey, and obviously some of the hot topics were obviously on the Brown Act, COVID-19, and then how to handle controversial speech and audiences, as we're seeing across the nation as boards are being attacked, trying to handle some of these major issues that are coming across the board. We've been fortunate, I think, as a school district and a board, where we have not encountered any of such discussions, and I'm hopeful that that continues. But we'll see soon, depending on how this mandate all works out. I do want to say that Mr. Peterson, continue just moving us forward. Like you've mentioned, it's challenging times, but our staff is making the best of it. And last but not least, I've had the time now to go and check out some athletic events in person. And it's just great to see people in the football stand. It's great to see people out in the volleyball. I've not made it out to the outdoor activities. I mean, as far as water polo goes, or golf and tennis, but just to be out there and seeing our kids and the rallies and just kids in general starting to fill up those our gymnasiums. I think it's great, and I think we're slowly moving forward, Mr. Peterson, and opening things back up. So I appreciate the work that you and all the staff have done to keep us as safe as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Jayasinghe?
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for the warm welcome and well wishes, President and trustees, Superintendent Peterson and staff, and everyone else who took the time out to send me well wishes privately and through social media. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I look forward to serving. Over the last few weeks, I went through orientation. Thank you, Superintendent and Ms. Rohrbach, for getting me initiated on voting correctly, well, with the computer and everything else. Went seamlessly tonight, so thank you for that. Started meeting with department heads. I look forward to visiting all the school sites over the next few weeks. And last weekend, attended the MCSBA conference, which was a great way to learn more about how the school boards operate in the Brown Act, and got to know the fellow trustees. So again, thank you everyone for the warm welcome, and I look forward to working with each of you.
Thank you. Trustee Ham?
It's with a heavy heart that I think we all share our condolences for BUHAC Colony and the loss of Miss Lee on this campus. Mrs. Euchre shared with me what a special presence she was to both staff and students, and she will be sadly missed. It's awesome to have DTA and CSEA here tonight. Quite frankly, it got a little bit lonely, so we're happy to have you all here and sharing, expressing your frustrations, concerns, and gratitude at times as well. We definitely look forward to an update following the October 27th negotiations with CSEA, and are very hopeful that we'll come to some resolution sooner rather than later. I really, really, really want to invite students to come back to our meetings as well. We are wearing masks because we're hoping that a student's going to walk in at any moment. Without students here, we are not required to wear masks. So students, come talk to us. We love to hear from you. Within my neighborhood, I have heard incredible feedback about homecoming and homecoming dances, and I think that it's sensational that we've been able to do that. And again, one of these great COVID wins, if you will, these outdoor homecoming dances, I think have been really well received by students. So kudos to everyone who make those happen. Our number one concern is always for our students and our staff and your safety. And so we need to continue to figure out how to make sure that that everyone feels comfortable and welcome and secure on our campuses. I want to thank Pamela Merritt Bennett from the Black Parallel School Board for her comments and her email earlier this week as well, sharing specifically some of her concerns on our campuses. And then while I know we're working really hard and have programs like Nurtured Heart and Character Strength, it's great to see what Merced High is doing around financial literacy, and these are all, I think, exceptional life skills for our students. I don't know where this might fit in, but I feel like one of the things that our kids are lacking right now is where to get good direction, and they follow so many people who are misleading them on social media or wherever, these influencers, and we are having the issues with our bathrooms and all the fighting. And I mean, my own kids, I just scratch my head sometimes and think, who are these people that you think are intelligent? They're not, right? And so we learned about cyberbullying and a variety of things, but I think it would be really fantastic if we're able to add some component of education around, fact checking and making sure that you are making good personal decisions regardless of what idiots are saying. So, anyway, thank you.
Well said.
Not well articulated, but
well stated. Thank you, Mrs. Yam. Thank you to all of you for your comments. Just ditto to everything that was said. I'd also like to welcome Amali to the board. We know you'll be a great addition. Also, giving some consideration to the board study session that Mr. Peterson mentioned, I think would be in everyone's best interest, so that we can tackle what's ahead of us and best support our staff, students, and our families. A couple of the items that I think we've heard more than once was the training for the liaisons, so maybe some more information on where we stand on that, and also our mental health and counseling, and do we have any information or data on what our needs are and the effectiveness of our current programs and our staffing, because it does seem to be an issue that is not going to go away, and what is the best way for us to address that in support of our students and our staff and our families? So if there are no last minute comments, then thank you everyone for coming. Enjoy your evening, and we will adjourn at 9:01. Thank you.